Chapter 522. Shinfeng. Renbochin gritted his teeth when he heard the name of the culprit. This be ****. She was the one who taught the lady boss. She was also the one who taught the finger-guessing game. Although Renbochin was well aware of her identity, she was a little too daring. Of course, Renbochin had sufficient reason to believe that if he fired her and found another assistant, it would still be someone from the nation. Perhaps he should go abroad and find a Chinese person. Renbochin thought about it and asked, "Did I say anything that I shouldn't?" "No." The three of them turned around at the same time. Renbochin was a little doubtful whether they knew what he had said, but he didn't ask any further after hearing their reply. He went upstairs, changed his clothes, and called Shinfeng. "Where are you? Come to my place." Renbochin's voice was very calm, and he couldn't tell whether he was happy or angry. However, he was still somewhat dissatisfied with Shinfeng. Although she had been doing a good job recently, he wasn't happy to hear her try to get information out of her. "I want to resign." Shinfeng shouted at Renbochin as soon as she answered the call and immediately hung up. "Ha!" Renbochin was stunned. What was wrong with Shinfeng today? He hadn't caused any trouble for her yet, but she actually dared to say that she wanted to resign. She even hung up on him. Before he could figure it out, his phone received 3 photos in a row. They were 3 selfies of Shinfeng. He saw a bald, angry, and wearing a patient's uniform. Was it a pig's head? His eyes had become slits, and one side of his face was completely swollen. He didn't know what kind of medicine was applied on it. His hair was shaved, and his head was wrapped in bandages. The background should be a hospital ward. The other photo showed his arm in a cast. Shinfeng then called again. "Did you see that? Look at what your **** has done. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not doing it anymore. Boo-hoo." Perhaps it was because she was thinking about her tragic experience, but Shinfeng actually started sobbing. This was quite rare. After all, she always had a very cold and neutral image, and it was rare to see her so emotional. It turned out that she was still a woman. Renbochin was a little puzzled. Was this caused by the 3 idiots below? "Have a good rest first. I'll give you a month off." He hung up the phone, ran downstairs, and saw that the 3 winged cavalry warriors who had arrived earlier were showing off to the other 3 about the things in the room. "Did you guys beat up Shinfeng?" Renbochin asked with a black face. "How many times have I reminded you?" "No." The 3 of them shook their heads in unison. "Not yet." Renbochin looked at the selfie that Shinfeng had sent and asked, "How did she become like this?" "Play Little B. She's the one who suggested it." "You can't blame us," the 3 of them immediately said. Renbochin suddenly thought of the scene he saw when he just returned. "You guys play one more round. B, fly among the flowers." The 3 of them used rock, paper, scissors at the same time, and then, pow! The other 2 slapped one of them to the wall. "That's it. She suggested it. I didn't expect her to be so fragile." As expected, Renbochin was a little speechless. Shinfeng brought this upon herself, right? A sin caused by heaven could be forgiven, but a sin brought upon oneself was the hardest to bear. Renbochin thought for a while and warned, "Don't miss your patrol. If anything happens to Her Majesty's temporary imperial residence, no one can protect you." This wasn't Dayo, and he wasn't prepared to let these people behave like they were in the military. Speaking of which, as long as it wasn't during war, they would probably behave the same way in the military. Understood. The 3 of them were originally worried that Renbochin would reprimand them, but they were overjoyed when they heard this. "How's your learning these days?" Renbochin asked. "Those chefs are good people, and I learned a lot from them," the 3 of them said. "Ha! Chefs. Where's the teacher I found for you? Ren Baqin was puzzled. I didn't see the teacher. Didn't come. Ren Baqin took out his phone and looked at it. Sure enough, there were 2 calls from the tutor he found previously. He immediately called back. Then, the other party immediately hung up. Ren Baqin's face immediately turned black. What was going on today? He called again. This time, the other party picked up and said rather coldly, Sir, what else do you want? Why didn't you show up at the appointed time? Are you serious? I went, but I was chased away. Although I'm not as rich as you, there's no need to tease me, right? I'm just a student, and I'm not used to these things. After finishing his sentence, he hung up the phone. Who came after I left? Ren Baqin turned to look at the winged cavalry warriors and asked with a black face. There was a skinny and weak little guy who said he was a tutor. Sir Ren, you instructed us to chase him away except for the designated people. So, I chased him away. Ren Baqin was speechless. I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I'm not angry. Ren Baqin muttered as he held his head. If he were to get serious with these idiots, he would lose. The 3 of you can tell them about it first. Ren Baqin waved his hand, drove to the entrance of the university, and stuck a piece of paper on the car window. Looking for a tutor with an hourly salary of 200 yuan. Requirement, honest. Many people saw this scene and immediately became interested. An hourly salary of 200 yuan was considered pretty good for part-time students. A one-on-one high school student's hourly salary was generally only about 100 yuan. Needless to say, Ren Baqin wasn't looking for a 985 university, but a 211 university. However, Ren Baqin didn't specify primary, secondary, or high school, and he didn't specify any subjects. This made people feel a little uncertain. Some people even suspected that he was a scammer. After all, most of the things that seemed to be very advantageous were actually scams. After a long time, a bespectacled, plainly dressed boy who looked a little thin and weak walked over and knocked on the car window. Excuse me, what kind of tutor are you looking for? The boy asked. I'm a first-year student here and have just passed the college entrance examination. You, get in the car. Ren Baqin sized him up and said after seeing that he was quite honest. Aw. Don't worry, your standard is good enough to teach. I don't need a high standard, I just need to be honest enough. The boy hesitated for a while. This price was quite attractive, and he could get into the car at the entrance of the university where the surveillance cameras could see it. There shouldn't be a problem. At the thought of this, he got into the car. Ren Baqin said as he drove, I only request that you teach me Chinese, the simpler the better. Then, teach me some general knowledge. Ah. The boy was a little surprised. Some children have been living in the mountains and don't know anything about the outside world. I need someone to help them understand these things, Ren Baqin said. It was better to bring the boy over first. If he took out the photos of the winged cavalry, he reckoned that no one would dare to go. In fact, after interacting with the winged cavalry, one would know that even though they looked a little scary, they weren't considered bad people. After hearing this, the boy finally felt a little relieved. In his opinion, they should be children from very poor areas. Although he didn't know why the person in front of him was doing this, perhaps he was a good person. Did he adopt some children from the mountainous areas? At the thought of this, the boy immediately felt a deep sense of respect. He was born in the countryside. If it wasn't for the help of some kind people, he was afraid that he would have been like those children in the village and dropped out of school to work before graduating from primary school. As a result, he respected and liked these kind people from the bottom of his heart. Not in the city, the boy asked when he saw that Ren Baqin had been driving out of the city. Don't worry, I will reimburse you for your travel expenses. The time spent on the road will also be calculated according to the teaching time. There's no need. This price is already very high, the boy said with some embarrassment. It doesn't matter. This group of children doesn't know much. You might have to put in some effort, Renbochin said. I will work hard, the boy said. He swore in his heart that he would definitely help them and teach them what he knew. It wasn't just for the salary, but also because they had the same background as him. This thought persisted until Renbochin opened the door of the villa. Well, these 6 are the students you will be teaching. Renbochin smiled amiably. Chapter 523. Sir, I'm afraid I can't do this job. The boy trembled as he looked at the 6 burly men in front of him. They were 1.8 meters tall, more than half a head taller than Renjia, and more than twice as wide as him. They stood in front of him like a wall. Also, their bald heads, ferocious faces, and cold gazes didn't look like good people in any way. The most important thing was the crisscrossing scars on their bodies. You're telling me that they're children from the mountains? How are they like children from the mountains? How are they like children from the mountains? How are they like children? Even the legendary gangs aren't this scary, right? Are they bandits? How should I address you? Renbochin asked with a smile. Ding Jia. Sir, I don't have money. My family is from the countryside, and our family doesn't earn more than 10,000 yuan a year. Ding Jia looked like he was about to cry, and trembled. Don't be afraid. They are good children and very straightforward. It's their parents' fault that they look like this, not them. Don't judge a book by its cover, right? Renbochin said kindly. But they really aren't children, just treat them like children. Renbochin said decisively. I can't do it. I feel like I'm the child. Ding Jia clung to the door and shivered like a quail being targeted by a pack of wolves. However, Renbochin had already closed the door before he could do so. He now felt that he was really unlucky today. Previously, he thought that the smiling young man beside him was a good person worthy of respect. Now, he just wanted to give him back his respect. Let him go while you're at it. 300 yuan an hour. Don't worry, we are all decent people. I'm also a state employee and have a certificate. These people have been living in the mountains and are all hunters. The scars on their bodies are from hunting, and they would starve to death if they didn't hunt. They know very little about the outside world, and I don't have that much time to teach them, so I found a teacher for them. The country has said that those who get rich first will lead those who get rich later. At least spiritually, you are the first to get rich, so you need to lead those who haven't gotten rich yet. Renbochin continued to smile and even took the initiative to increase the salary by 100 yuan. Ding Jia was struggling between the high salary of 300 yuan per hour and the threat of the bandits in front of him. 300 yuan an hour, and only 3 hours a day. That would be 10,000 yuan a month, which was equivalent to his family's annual income. For him, this amount of money was enough to change the fate of his family. I don't do anything illegal. Ding Jia said cautiously. Don't worry. We are all decent people. I'm a government employee. Do you want to see my proof of employment? Renbochin smiled. Yes, Renbochin's mouth twitched. This child really had no EQ. However, this child was rather honest and didn't have any schemes. It would be a good idea to let him teach these winged cavalry warriors. He would be much better than the others. Have a seat first. Renbochin pointed at the sofa and went upstairs to get his ID. When he came down, he found Ding Jia sitting there awkwardly with his hands on his lap and his head almost burrowing into his pants. In front of him, there were 6 burly men staring at him with wide eyes. Well, don't worry. They just look scary. You don't have to be so restrained. Ren Boqian threw the ID on the table. Ding Jia looked at the contents of the ID, looked at Ren Boqian, and carefully examined the ID. In the end, he couldn't distinguish whether it was real or fake, but he was more or less relieved. It was about the size of a fingernail. He will be your teacher from now on and will be responsible for teaching you some basic knowledge. If you don't understand anything, you can ask him. Remember to respect him. Don't beat him, scold him, threaten him, or use him as fitness equipment. Ren Boqian said to the 6-winged cavalry warriors. However, Ding Jia trembled with every sentence he said. He was constantly doubting whether his decision was right or wrong. Got it, Lady Boss. Got it, Sir Ren. The 6 men became 2 voices. Call me second boss. Ren Boqian's face darkened. Whoever calls me Lady Boss again, I will strip him naked and hang him on the flagpole. You can start now. You can come whenever you have time, Ren Boqian said to Ding Jia. As for the money, I will transfer 35,000 yuan to you first. 30,000 yuan will be your tuition fee for 100 hours, and 5,000 yuan will be your travel expenses during this period. Ren Boqian wasn't worried that Ding Jia would run away after taking the money. He didn't have the guts. It didn't matter if he had the guts. Ren Boqian would show him what it meant to rule the country by law. Ren Boqian asked for Ding Jia's WeChat number, transferred the money, and went upstairs. After a while, he came down and found that Ding Jia had adjusted his emotions and was resisting his fear to ask the winged cavalry warriors. At the very least, he wanted to know what these people knew. His conclusion was that this group of people really didn't know anything. As expected, this group of people came from a mountain village that had no contact with the outside world and made a living by hunting. Regardless of whether it was true or not, he could only tell himself that it was true. After staying in the villa for 3 hours, he got up and bade farewell when the sky was getting dark. Since Ren Boqian had already transferred the money to him, it wasn't difficult to book a taxi. However, he still walked down the mountain to take the bus and tried to save every cent. Ding Jia, you found a part-time tutor? 200 yuan an hour. How is it? Is it reliable? Is it a scammer? Ding Jia was questioned by a few of his roommates when he returned to the dormitory. After all, 200 yuan an hour wasn't a small amount for students. In fact, many people saw it at that time, but many of them felt that it was a scammer. In the end, Ding Jia was the first to ask, and it actually succeeded. After Ding Jia left, there were even more people who believed that he was a scammer who specialized in scamming rural students who didn't know anything. As a result, there were people who questioned him the moment he returned. Some of them were kind, but there were also people who were waiting to see him make a fool of himself. Ding Jia didn't mention anything about increasing the salary to 300 yuan an hour. He just squeezed out a smile and said, "It's quite reliable." He thought to himself that it would be better if those people looked like normal people. He didn't even know if he had really profited this time because those people always made him feel afraid. Really? Is it a weekly or monthly knot? Be careful, his roommate warned. I have already paid a sum of money in advance. It's enough for a few days, Ding Jia whispered. Ding Jia whispered. He was truly grateful to Ren Boqian for this. This sum of money was too important to him. How much? Someone asked curiously. Ding Jia didn't have much contact with people and didn't know how sinister people were. He raised his hand and gestured 3,000 yuan. This person is quite generous. You have met a good person, someone immediately laughed. How do you know it's not 300 yuan? Someone immediately asked. Ding Jia has been gone for a few hours this time. 300 yuan might not even be enough for today's lesson. He just said that he paid a sum of money in advance, so it should be at least 3,000 yuan, right? Ding Jia, am I right? The person who spoke just now laughed. He was very confident in his judgment. Ding Jia opened his mouth and then nodded. In the end, he didn't mention that the other party paid 30,000 yuan in advance. However, this still made several of his roommates envious. After all, only a small number of people were rich. When they first entered university, many students had the idea of becoming tutors to earn some pocket money, but they couldn't do so for various reasons. No one expected that Ding Jia, who was the most inconspicuous, would find such a good part-time job. The next 2 days were weekends. Ding Jia left school early, took the subway and bus to the foot of the mountain, and then walked to the villa for lessons. Although Rinpoche said that even the time spent on the road would be counted as class time, he didn't want to and didn't dare to do so. After 2 days, he could finally look at these 6 people calmly. Although they looked like bandits, they were very straightforward and weren't as ferocious as he had imagined. Except for a few things that made him feel uneasy. For example, when he went there, he saw them lifting up their cars to exercise. Or, they fought in the courtyard like in the movies, punching a big hole in the ground with one punch. Or, they could eat 120 people's meals in one meal. Who exactly were they? No matter how stupid he was, he knew that there was something wrong with their identities. However, he didn't dare to ask and could only pretend that he didn't see anything. Rinpoche was very satisfied with his performance. Do well. There are other jobs waiting for you if you do well. However, you have to remember that you are being paid by me. As long as it doesn't violate the law, you can't reveal anything about me here to anyone, including certain state agencies. If there are any problems, you can ask them to look for me. If I find out that you have leaked anything about me here, Huangpu River will welcome you with open arms. As Rinpoche spoke, he released his imposing aura. After all, he was second only to the Empress in Dayo. Apart from the Empress, he came into contact with various top experts or generals in the army every day. The imposing aura that was imperceptibly cultivated wasn't something that ordinary people could resist. After hearing Rinpoche's words and being pressured by his imposing aura, Ding Jia immediately sweated profusely and nodded like a chick pecking at rice. Well, I'm going on a mission. If you have anything to say, you can tell me when I come back. Rinpoche nodded with satisfaction. He liked this boy who didn't mix with others. He might be a little clumsy, but he was more reassuring than Shinfeng. Chapter 524. There's no more wine. One of the winged cavalry warriors pondered. There's no more wine. Another person tipped the bottle down, and a drop of wine dripped from the bottle. We could have drunk for a few more days. The 3 winged cavalry warriors looked at the 3 people opposite them. This wine was originally enough for 3 people to drink for a few days, but now that there were 6 of them, it was immediately gone. Did you bring money? The 3 of them rummaged through their pockets and pulled out a handful of silver fragments. Can it be used? I think they use another kind of money here. I've seen them take it out before. What should we do? Shall we go to the back of the mountain to hunt some prey to exchange for wine? There isn't anything big on this mountain. I have already circled around. The winged cavalry warrior who had arrived earlier had a solemn look on his face. The 6 of them stared at each other for a long time. Find someone to borrow it from. We'll return it to him after we get his salary. The next day was Wednesday. Ding Jia had no classes in the afternoon, so he went to the villa again. As soon as he entered the house, he was surrounded by 6 people. What for? Ding Jia said in a trembling voice as he looked at the 6 brown bears with ferocious eyes around him. There's no more wine, I didn't either. As soon as Ding Jia finished speaking, he felt the air around him turn colder. I'll go buy it. Ding Jia said with a long face. I'll pay you back when I get my pay. The 6 of them said. After all, it was not good to rob this bean sprout's money. It felt like they were robbing a child's candy. After a while, drink. I don't know how to drink. I'll drink. Ding Jia put on a long face and drank a third of the cup in one gulp. He immediately felt as if a knife had slashed across his throat. Then, his stomach was filled with heat, causing his face to immediately turn red. Little B. How do we play? I see. The 6 men whispered to each other for a long time before their gazes landed on Ding Jia again. No. I really don't. You guys play. I'm sorry, I'll play. Ding Jia pulled a long face. What did I do wrong? I'm a tutor, I'm a tutor, I'm a tutor. I'm not here to buy wine for you, nor am I here to drink with you. Didn't we agree not to threaten teachers? 2 little bees, flying among the flowers, flying. Fly. Fly. Paw. One of them flew out and slammed heavily into the wall. Bang! The whole house was shaking. Ding Jia's face turned green when he saw this. His dizzy mind immediately sobered up, and he said in a trembling voice, "Can I stop playing? Don't worry, you are so fragile, I will be gentler." The winged cavalry beside him comforted him. Ding Jia, is it the difference between dying without an intact corpse and having an intact corpse? Do you want to beat me to death? How can a real man be so timid? Another winged cavalry warrior grinned, and the scar on his face became even more hideous. But I'm really scared. I'm different from you guys, 2 little bees. Flying among the flowers. Flying. 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 Pow! Bang! Ding Jia was trembling like a quail. By the time the sky turned dark, the faces of the 6 winged cavalry warriors were swollen like pigs. Miraculously, Ding Jia was unscathed. Brat, you're awesome. One of the winged cavalry warriors laughed heartily and patted Renbachian's shoulder, almost knocking him into the ground. Not bad, not bad. I didn't drink your wine for nothing today. Tomorrow, I will teach you a set of boxing techniques. It's the most powerful boxing technique in our village. Everyone practices it, and it will make the neighboring village jump up and down. Ding Jia was still a little dizzy when he left the villa. When the wind blew, he felt even more dizzy. However, the joy of surviving a calamity still filled his heart. Someone is going to teach me boxing techniques. He was looking forward to it and wondered if he could become as powerful as those people. When he reached the foot of the mountain, 2 people got out of a black off-road vehicle and carried him into the vehicle. He then fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up, he found himself in a room. The surrounding environment was already pretty good for him. To others, it was just an ordinary room decoration in a motel. He turned his head and saw a man and a woman sitting beside him. They were both in their 40s. You're awake. You are. We're from the National Security Agency. Please assist in the investigation. Upon hearing about the National Security Agency, Ding Jia felt as if he had been struck by lightning. A wave of fear gripped his heart, making him almost unable to think. Seeing his expression, the 2 of them calmed down. This kid was easy to deal with. I didn't do anything illegal. Ding Jia said with difficulty. We have to ask to know whether you did or did not. Tell us about the villa on the mountain, the one you went into. Why were you there? Ding Jia almost cried when he heard this. It was indeed because of the group of people on the mountain. Wasn't that guy surnamed Ren a citizen of the country? Could he be lying to him with a fake certificate? Give me a glass of water first. Ding Jia whispered. After drinking half a glass of water and feeling a little better, he told them about being a home tutor. What have they been saying these days? Tell us what you know. If I tell you, will you arrest them? Ding Jia asked carefully. No, but we need to know something, the man said. Then I can't say. Ding Jia immediately shook his head. Ding Jia's reaction stunned the two of them. Did he threaten you? Ding Jia nodded vigorously. We are citizens of the country. We can protect you. Ding Jia shook his head again. Do you think the country can't protect you? Ding Jia shook his head. Then what are you afraid of? Do you think we can't protect you? Ding Jia nodded heavily. The two of them were speechless. Does your family know that you are so honest? If you don't tell us, we can arrest you. The man put on a stern expression. If possible, he didn't want to do this. After all, he still hoped to get the other party's help. However, this guy was too funny. Ding Jia trembled, but after thinking about what that person said, he mustered up his courage and said, his name is Renbaqian. If you need anything, you can look for him, Miss Qing Yuan, where's Her Majesty? Renbaqian had just returned to Dao and went to the Empress's room to greet her, but she wasn't there. Her Majesty drank some wine just now and said she was bored. She went out for a walk, Qing Yuan said while wiping the table. How long has she been gone? Renbaqian nodded and threw a bag of white rabbit creamy candy to her. Less than 4 hours, Qing Yuan said with a smile. Get someone to inform me when Her Majesty returns. Renbaqian smiled and left. In the past, there were always various dramas of emperors wanting to leave the palace and various ministers admonishing them. This didn't exist for the Empress. As long as she didn't go to the Great Xia Palace for a walk, it was fine. With the Empress's strength, as long as she didn't run into an enemy encirclement, no one in Tianjing Basin could do anything to her. In everyone's opinion, the Empress was bored and wandering around the city or not far from it. However, at this moment, the Empress was holding a bottle of wine and standing at the foot of a mountain in the distance. In front of her was a winding mountain road that wasn't considered steep. The mountain road was about 3 meters wide and had been excavated for many years. After passing through this winding mountain road, there was a vast expanse of open space in front of her. 3 surging rivers were lying on the ground like 3 huge dragons sleeping soundly. This was the origin of the name Wang Estuary. Back then, when the Han nation was powerful and prosperous, many literati left their writings here. The Empress looked at the mountains in front of her, drank a mouthful of wine, and floated like a fairy. Renbaqian's movements were too slow. After staying in Tianjing Basin for too long, she wanted to return to the palace. She heard that there were a few experts here. If she killed them, the advancement of the army would be much faster. The Empress's face was slightly red, and she looked a little tipsy. She shook the wine bottle, which was still half full. With a light tap of her feet, the scenery on both sides quickly moved backward. There were a few sentries in the forest in the distance. When they saw a woman in red standing in the distance, they were hesitant about whether to issue a warning. After all, the other party was only one person, and they were afraid of making a fuss over a minor issue. In the blink of an eye, the woman disappeared. Subsequently, a gust of wind swept past the sentries. An astonishing aura rose from the forest. An old man sitting at the top of the mountain suddenly opened his eyes, and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. This aura. Is it a challenge? It's somewhat familiar. Is it Qi Zhixiao? The old man's face changed. His body blurred, and he appeared on a big rock as he looked down the mountain. It's Qi Zhixiao. A figure appeared beside him. What should we do? Retreat. Both of us aren't her match, and she won't do anything to those ordinary soldiers. But there are still our disciples. She won't do anything to them. Let's go. It will be too late if we don't leave now. Following their conversation, many people in the mountains looked up and saw a red figure emitting an astonishing aura leaping up from the forest and heading straight for the mountain peak. I'm getting tired of this. All of you, quickly come down and die. The Empress took advantage of her drunkenness and let out a long whistle that shook the wilderness. All the birds and beasts in the mountains lowered their heads. Chapter 525. Renbochin sat on a chair and opened the box next to him. Inside were black tokens that were decorated with fish dragon patterns. On the front were 3 blood-red words, Rearguard Commandery, and 2 red words, By Who, were written on the back. The tokens were only the size of a palm, weighed about 2 ounces, and were completely made of alloy. Each of your tokens is also proof of your identity. When you meet people from the court and the Rearguard Commandery, show them first to prove your identity, Renbochin said as he distributed the tokens. When everyone received the tokens, they found that they were extremely exquisite and had fine lines. There were no traces of carving at all, and they couldn't be imitated. Renbochin watched from above as everyone put away the tokens and said, "There are 2 tasks for everyone to complete." "Please speak, sir," everyone immediately said. Now that everyone had received their tokens and their identities had been confirmed, they could only listen to what Renbochin said. Renbochin never said that the Rearguard Commandery was a city gate that could be entered and exited at will. From his previous methods, everyone could guess what would happen to him if he wanted to withdraw from the battle. Renbochin got up and opened the box next to him. He took out a few binoculars and handed them to everyone. "Try it." Everyone took the strange thing from Renbochin and asked after a while, "Sir, how do we use this thing?" Renbochin picked one up, put it in front of his eyes, and took a look outside. Everyone immediately understood. One of them put the binoculars in front of his eyes and looked outside the courtyard. He suddenly exclaimed in surprise, and his expression changed. It wasn't just one person, but several people in succession. Through this thing in their hands, the distant courtyard wall seemed to be right in front of them. The little damage on it, as well as the weeds sticking out of the wall, could be seen clearly. "Senior Chi, what's wrong?" someone asked in a low voice. These were all Earthwill experts who wouldn't easily be surprised by anything. At this time, they were surprised with such a thing, which puzzled others. "Look!" Senior Chi handed the binoculars to him. The others used the binoculars to look at things in the distance. Some even used the binoculars to look at the people opposite and were shocked. On the opposite side of the binoculars were 2 dark holes full of weeds. After taking a few steps back, they realized that they were actually nostrils. Everyone passed the binoculars to each other and took a look. When they looked at this thing again, their eyes were filled with amazement. Although this thing couldn't increase one's strength, it was very useful. This is a telescope. As long as it's within sight, everything can be magnified 10 times, which is equivalent to getting closer by 10 times. Even objects the size of insects in the distance could be seen clearly with this thing. In addition, there's another thing called night vision. It can see the human body in the distance at night. No matter how well it's hidden, it can be found immediately. I need a few people to investigate the movements at the Wang estuary. They don't need to get close. They just need to monitor the other party's arrangements. With these 2 items, I can ensure my own safety to the greatest extent. "Sir Ren, I'm willing to go," someone immediately said. Everyone knew in their hearts that working for the imperial court was not something they could do as they pleased. Even in the sect, it was impossible. For the first mission, Renbochin allowed everyone to register themselves. Those who took the initiative would definitely have a higher position in his heart. The binoculars and the so-called night vision goggles had increased their safety to the maximum. Everyone present was an Earthwill expert. As long as they weren't surrounded, it wouldn't be difficult for them to escape. If they didn't fight for such an opportunity, there was no point in joining the Rearguard Commandery. "Sir, I'm willing." Everyone spoke up one after another. Some addressed themselves as I, some as subordinate, and some as Chin and Ching. For a moment, it was a little chaotic. A total of more than 20 people volunteered. Let's do it this way. You guys go to the Wang Estuary and Ghost Ridge to investigate the situation. It's best to figure out the composition and arrangements of the people there. Ren Baqin smiled. After thinking that these people used to be practitioners and didn't know much about military affairs, he said, the number of people on the other side depends on their cooking. After all, they can't eat cold food outside every day and have to cook. Ren Baqin roughly explained some of the things he had seen before, which surprised everyone. They didn't expect him to know these things. Everyone quivered. They would never forget those few days in this lifetime. As for the rest of you, I have another task for you. How is the recruitment of Tiki going? I've found the manpower. Well, send people to the cities in the north, a total of 37 cities. There must be at least 10 people in each city to monitor the situation in each city. Report to me immediately if there are any bad movements. If anyone colludes and plots against us, kill them without mercy. At the same time, recruit strong men in the cities and hide in each city to investigate all kinds of news. Not only now, but even in the future, you have to be clear about the slightest movement in each city. After that, you will be assigned a jurisdiction. If something goes wrong in someone's jurisdiction, I will take that person's head. Ren Baqin said sinisterly. Yes. Everyone was shocked. After speaking, Ren Baqin leisurely sat back in his seat. After thinking for a while, he seemed to have nothing else to say and was ready to dismiss everyone. At this moment, a red shadow landed in front of the door. Your Majesty. Ren Baqin stood up and cupped his hands. The red muslin on the Empress seemed to be torn in two places. Just as Ren Baqin was about to ask what happened, the Empress threw two heads to the ground with a cold face. Your Majesty, this is... Ren Baqin was stunned and asked softly. The Empress ignored him and walked away from the door. Qing Xianjun. Fox Roji. Everyone was shocked when they saw the two heads on the ground. Ha! Ren Baqin thought for a while. He had heard of these two names before. They were two of the 18 earth will experts in Tianjing Basin. In particular, Fox Roji. Most people would think that this name belonged to a woman, but it was actually a man. When he was young, he was called Young Fox because he liked to put on makeup. Even when he was older, he was still the same. Many people secretly called him Fox Roji. If he remembered correctly, Zhou Qing was injured by the two of them a few days ago. Sure enough, it's the two of them. Everyone whispered. They seem to be at the Wang Estuary, right? Qi Zixiao went to the Wang Estuary. Everyone was shocked. The Empress actually went to the Wang Estuary to kill these two spirit will experts. Everyone knew that the Empress was very strong, and the battle at Mount Wu had proven this point. However, the Empress went to the Wang Estuary to kill two people and came back without any injuries. This still surprised everyone. With a top expert like the Empress and the winged cavalry around, the revolutionary army in the south wouldn't be able to resist them. Surrendering was indeed the right choice. Otherwise, they would end up like these two people. Ren Baqin snorted. The person who spoke earlier immediately realized that he had made a slip of the tongue. He quickly lowered his head and said, "It was a slip of the tongue. Please forgive me, sir." Ren Baqin squinted at him, memorized his appearance, and said, "Now that the two spirit will experts at the Wang Estuary are dead, you can leave with peace of mind." Yes. Many Baihu who were heading to the Wang Estuary were in high spirits. Chapter 526. Ren Baqin distributed binoculars, night vision goggles, and another type of tiki tag for everyone to distribute. The tiki tag was also black and covered with animal patterns without any words. After everyone left, Renbochin called Zwolang and the other 5 over and instructed, find a house and temporarily use it as a place for the rearguard commandery to handle affairs. They will collect information and get someone to sort it out before handing it over to me. In addition, check the Wang estuary. You guys will follow them and see if there are any people with bad intentions or suspicions of leaking information. It's better to kill the wrong person than to let them off. The 6 of them tensed up because Renbochin still didn't fully trust them. However, this was normal. After all, there was a spy who snuck in and even tried to assassinate Renbochin. Among the remaining people, not all of them were of one mind. After Renbochin finished speaking, he saw that they understood and instructed, you may leave. After tidying up his clothes, Renbochin strolled to the backyard and suddenly stopped when he was halfway there. He saw a girl sitting in the yard beside him in a daze. The fool that was brought back from Earth. These days, the guards didn't report anything about her. Their attention was only limited to someone delivering food to her and ensuring that she wouldn't starve to death. Other than that, they had almost forgotten about her existence. Wang Baobao had changed into a new set of clothes. She was no longer wearing the muddy clothes from before, but a set of women's clothes with a pleated skirt that was commonly seen in Tianjin Basin. She sat there quietly with her eyes focused on the ground. No one knew what she was looking at. Renbochin walked over, followed her gaze, and saw 2 insects that looked like a beetle on the ground. A duel. Do you remember anything? Renbochin stood in front of her and asked faintly. There was no response. Who changed your clothes? Renbochin asked again. Wang Baobao looked up at him in a daze before lowering her head to look at the 2 insects. Guards! Renbochin shouted. Sir Ren. Who changed her clothes? Renbochin wanted to know the answer to this question. It was Miss Qingyuan. I felt that her clothes didn't look good here, so I got someone to get her a new set of clothes to change into. Oh, that's all. Renbochin waved his hand, looked down at Wang Baobao, and turned to leave. From the beginning to the end, Wang Baobao didn't react at all. When Renbochin arrived at the Empress's room, he saw that she was taking a nap on the bed. The door was open, and Qing Yuan and Hong Wuan were nowhere to be seen. Seeing this, Renbochin didn't disturb her. He waited in the courtyard for a long time before he heard the Empress wake up. Your Majesty! Renbochin stood in front of the door and cupped his hands in greeting. He saw the Empress sitting on the bed. Her eyes were a little blurry, but she regained consciousness very quickly. Is everything all right now? The Empress asked softly. She got up and walked out of the house to feel the temperature outside. I'm here to see Her Majesty. Renbochin smiled and asked, did Her Majesty go to the Wang estuary? I just went out of the city for a stroll. I saw 2 people acting suspiciously outside the city, so I casually killed them, the Empress said casually. Your Majesty, you have changed. Renbochin lamented bitterly. Your Majesty, you have learned to lie and become tsundere. It wasn't like this before. Could the 2 of them run out of the city together? Sneaking around. Who could believe it? The Empress glared at him with her beautiful almond-shaped eyes. She had an expression that said, I'll paste you to the wall if you don't explain yourself. Renbochin felt a chill down his spine and changed his words. Your Majesty's bearing is getting more and more amazing. Even spirit will experts are like weeds in front of Your Majesty. Of course, with Your Majesty's strength, you can naturally treat them like weeds. With Your Majesty's achievements at such a young age, I wonder what level you will reach in the future. Just thinking about it makes me look forward to it. The Empress raised her head and thought about it. She also didn't know what level she could reach. Are you injured, Your Majesty? Renbochin asked with concern. These 2 people are just a piece of cake for me, the Empress said faintly. That's good. There's no need for your majesty to pay attention to these people in the future. If you make a move every time, what's the use of the court officials and the soldiers? You guys are too slow. The Empress said faintly. I kind of want to return to the palace. If your majesty is bored, why don't you return to Lawn City first? With Sir Shi and the winged cavalry here, there shouldn't be any problems, Renbochin whispered. We'll talk about it later. She walked in the courtyard and looked at a cluster of unknown flowers in front of her. They were pink and very fine, but they were also very beautiful. I feel that this flower is more suitable for your majesty. Renbochin picked the largest flower in the courtyard from the side. It was much bigger than his palm. It's too big. The Empress was a little disgusted. A man's romance should be as big as possible. Renbochin chuckled. The Empress didn't understand what he meant. She stared at the joke in front of her for a moment before walking out. Renbochin followed the Empress around the city. During this time, they met many people from the rearguard commandery heading toward the north and south of the city. When they saw the two of them, they quickly dismounted and saluted. After the two of them passed, they continued to move forward. This was the first time that many people saw the Empress, and her appearance amazed them. After another day, a batch of sheep and cows was delivered to Jiangbei City. This lifted the spirits of the soldiers in the city, and they finally didn't have to eat grass every day. Although it wasn't bad to eat occasionally, it was really unbearable to eat it every day. Accompanying them were 3,000 reinforcements from the Protectorate of the South. At this time, almost all the available troops of the Protectorate of the South had been deployed. There were already 9,000 soldiers from the Protectorate of the South and 700 winged cavalry in Jiangbei City. They had to face more than 250,000 to 300,000 soldiers from the South. Although more than half of them were new soldiers, the pressure was still not small. Not only did they have to win, but they also had to eliminate the rebels while minimizing casualties. Their only advantage was that they completely defeated the other side in terms of high-end strength. After losing 2 spirit will experts, the other side was only left with 7 people. In addition, there was a group of people including Li Mengyuan, Su Pingji, Yao Xinyan, and their families. There were a total of 70 people. Previously, they were kidnapped by Li Qianqiu to lead the way in Great Xia. In order to survive, they simply surrendered to Li Qianqiu. Later, Li Qianqiu kidnapped their families. After returning to Dayou, they were thrown into a small city along the way. In Lan City, the laws were stricter, and these foreigners had an easier time. In particular, the foreigners in Lan City were all sent by the big clans that controlled the trade routes. In those small cities, except for a few unscrupulous merchants, there were almost no foreigners to be seen. The commoners there were extremely repulsive toward foreigners. One could imagine the life of these Great Xia people. They were bullied almost everywhere and had to swallow their anger. Otherwise, they would be beaten up, and in serious cases, they might even lose their lives. They almost didn't dare to go out. However, they were kidnapped, so how much property could they have? It didn't take long for everything to be consumed. They didn't have land, didn't know how to graze, and were ostracized. If this continued, these people would probably starve to death in less than 2 months. The 3 of them were privately blamed by their families. Under such circumstances, it was better for the 3 of them to give up their lives than for their entire families to end up in such a situation. These words made the 3 of them speechless. Just as these people were privately discussing whether they should escape back to Great Xia, find a small village, and live incognito, an order gave them new hope. Renbochin saw the 3 of them at the newly established rearguard commandery. He saw that the 3 of them were tanned, skinny, and their clothes were full of stitches. You guys are a little miserable. Renbochin couldn't help but say. He had heard a little about what happened to the 3 of them, but he didn't expect them to be so miserable. Sir, if you have any orders, we will go through fire and water without hesitation. We only hope that you can give our families a place to settle down, the three of them said loudly with respect and hope in their eyes. This was the look of hope after everything had been obliterated by reality. Are you all scholars in Great Xia? Ren Baqian asked. Yes. We originally came out to travel before the examination, but all sorts of things happened later on. The three of them looked like they couldn't bear to look back at the past. What do you know? Ren Baqian asked. I know about all the classics and ancient books. I also know something about mathematics and the like, the three of them answered. 156 plus 611 minus 203 plus 24. What's that? Ren Baqian asked casually. It's 540, sir, one of the thin and small men answered. What's your name? Ren Baqian finally met someone who could add, subtract, multiply, and divide verbally after coming to this world. This made him feel like he had discovered a talent. Sir, I'm Yao Jingyan. What about you guys? Ren Baqian looked at the other two. I'm Li Mengyuan and Su Pingji. The other two quickly answered. The three of them were very humble. Even in Great Xia, their knowledge was considered superior among the younger generation, so they were naturally a little arrogant. However, after experiencing a series of events, that arrogance had long been worn away. The three of you will work in the rearguard commandery for now. You will be responsible for sorting out and collecting all kinds of information. If you do well, you will be promoted. As for your families, I will get someone to make arrangements for you, Ren Baqian said faintly. In his mind, these three people were useful. After all, they couldn't return to Great Xia now and had almost no way out. Instead, they were more reliable than some people in Tianjing Basin. Chapter 527. Your Majesty, there are 2 more days before the deadline of 30 days is up. Before that, I'm going back. Do you want to relax? Ren Baqian asked as he stood beside the Empress. The war would begin in 2 days. Shi Huanya had already begun his preparations, and all the soldiers in Zhongbei City were making their final preparations. The atmosphere in Zhongbei City was tense before the war. Ren Baqian was only in charge of the rearguard commandery and monitoring every move in the northern part of Tianjing Basin. However, after the war, he wouldn't be able to be as idle as he was now. The same went for the Empress. All right. The Empress nodded. A moment later, the two of them appeared in Ren Baqian's room. The Empress went back to her room to change. Ren Baqian turned to look at the gloomy sky outside the window and remembered that another year was about to pass. He picked up his phone to look at the date and was surprised to find that it was December 31st, the last day of 2019. After today, it would be 2020. The first time he came to Dayo was in the summer of 2017. More than 2 years had passed on Earth in such a short time, to the point that he was somewhat detached from the timeline on Earth. Other than checking the news every time he came back to understand the current situation, almost all his thoughts were on that world. After being in a daze for a while, Ren Baqian heard someone shouting outside the window. He walked to the window and looked down, only to see a winged cavalry warrior practicing boxing on the ground outside. There was originally a lawn, but it had already become a piece of soil that had been plowed hundreds of times. Just a handful of seeds could be used to grow vegetables. The winged cavalry warrior's feet stepped on the soil, creating 2 deep ditches. When he stepped on the ground, the soil under his feet rushed up like water. Ha! Ren Baqian looked at a person not far away who was clumsily imitating the winged cavalry warrior's movements. That tutor. What's his name, again? Ren Baqian thought for a while but couldn't remember. After looking out the window for a while, Ren Baqian heard footsteps heading downstairs and turned to open the door. Your Majesty! Renbochin walked to the top of the stairs and heard the voices downstairs. He said as he walked, "Call me Big Boss here." He then asked, "What's the name of your teacher?" "Bean Sprout." Renbochin was confused. Was that his name? "I saw him learning boxing outside." Renbochin asked casually. That day, there was no more wine. After drinking with him, Yen Yong said that he would teach him a fish technique. However, it was not a fish technique from the army. It was from their stronghold. If Sir Ren feels that it's inappropriate. The winged cavalry warrior scratched his head awkwardly and didn't continue speaking. After all, he had already said it, so he couldn't go back on his word. So be it. Just remember what you can say and what you can't, Renbochin said as he walked over and sat beside the Empress. He switched on the television to watch the news. In the end, the moment the television was switched on, the Empress snatched the remote control away and switched it to a television series. If an ordinary person were to learn the fist technique of our race, they would not be able to replenish their blood and chi after a long time. The faster they learn, the faster they die, the Water Empress said coldly. She naturally knew more about martial arts and the physical condition of ordinary people on Earth than these ordinary winged cavalry warriors. Ah! The winged cavalry warriors were shocked. Sir Ren, I'll ask them to stop right away. They didn't have a bad impression of this bean sprout. There's no hurry. Renbochin stopped him. He first asked Duan what they had learned over the past few days. After listening, Renbochin was satisfied. This tutor came every day mainly to tell them about the news and answer their various questions. This was better than the force-feeding method. At the very least, these winged cavalry warriors had learned a lot of basic knowledge. Subsequently, one of them went out and called the other two back. Your Majesty. The winged cavalry warrior in front cupped his fists and greeted the Empress as soon as he returned. It's Big Boss. Renbochin added. Go and do your own things, the Empress said coldly. With so many people around, it was a little unsightly. In particular, that bastard in front was blocking the television. Mr. Ren. Ding Jia didn't see Renbochin when he came in. He first saw the lady in red on the sofa, and his heart immediately thumped. He didn't expect there to be such a beautiful person in this world. She was much more beautiful than those celebrities on TV. He didn't even hear what the others were saying. Fortunately, he woke up very quickly. After all, the Empress gave off a very cold vibe, and the majesty of her body made him feel a little afraid. You have done well these days, Renbochin praised. After all, you have to be worthy of my salary. Ding Jia smiled bashfully. This kind of praise was a very important affirmation to him. Sometimes, when a big shot praised an ordinary person, that ordinary person would be happy for a few days. To him, Renbochin was that big shot. Yen Yong said that I shouldn't be in charge of teaching you this boxing technique, but you don't have to learn it, Renbochin said while looking at Ding Jia's expression. Ding Jia looked disappointed when he heard that. After all, he wanted to be like these people. Every boy had the dream of becoming a hero. However, Renbochin's words destroyed this path. However, he also knew that he was already taking advantage of such a high salary. Therefore, after feeling disappointed, he quickly felt relieved. Renbochin was satisfied when he saw his relieved expression. An idea popped up in his mind, and he asked, "Do you want to work for me?" He also lacked a few people who could take care of everything on Earth. He didn't attach much importance to ability because he could find all kinds of capable people. As long as he showed some interest, the nation would definitely find some people to work for him. These people were very capable, but they weren't his people. He needed people who could listen to him and had nothing to do with the nation. The little guy in front of him, whom he had found on the spur of the moment, seemed to have a simple temperament and could be used by him. Isn't it now? Ding Jia didn't quite understand what he meant. From now on, you will always work for me. This includes when you are in university, after you graduate, and until you die, Ren Baqin said faintly. Ha! Ding Jia's eyes widened, and he couldn't believe what he heard. My identity is a little special, so once you get on my boat, you can't get off. If you want to get off, you can only die. However, if you work for me, you can get what you want. Money, status, and how much you can get depends on your ability and how loyal you are, Ren Baqin said faintly. Ding Jia was a little confused. Ren Baqin's words were a little too distant for him. Before today, he didn't expect to encounter such a thing. Mr. Ren. Ding Jia was a little dumbfounded and didn't know how to continue speaking. You can go aside and think about it, Ren Baqin said. Then, Ding Jia really went to the side to think about it. Ren Baqin smiled and thought that this little guy was quite honest. The Empress glanced at Ding Jia and didn't see why this little guy was worth Ren Baqin's attention. She then continued to watch her television. Mr. Ren, why me? Ding Jia ran over to ask Ren Baqin after a while. He felt that he wasn't outstanding and had only been a tutor a few times. Although he didn't understand Ding Jia, he could tell that he was very rich. Such a rich person could find any kind of person he wanted, right? Because your identity is clean, Ren Baqin looked at him and said. A clean identity is the most important thing to me. Ding Jia didn't understand what Ren Baqin meant and asked cautiously, will I break the law? No. Don't forget my identity. I never break the law, Ren Baqin said. But someone came to look for me a few days ago, Ding Jia whispered. Ren Baqin's expression turned cold when he heard this. Who was it? What did they say? Ding Jia then recounted what happened that day. At that time, he was just too stubborn and didn't say anything. The other party didn't make things too difficult for him. They only gave him their phone number and promised him some things. Of course, there were also threats. After all, the other party was from the security department and Ding Jia was just an ordinary student from the countryside. They were confident that even if Ding Jia didn't agree, he wouldn't say anything. After all, he was just a tutor. They didn't expect Ding Jia to betray them. After listening, Ren Baqin picked up the phone beside him and called Yang Sr., your people have crossed the line. My concessions are limited. Yang Sen was a little confused on the other end of the phone. What happened? Ren Baqin recounted the incident in a very cold voice and said, don't tell me that you don't know about this and that it was done by a temporary worker. Since he made a deal with the nation, he had given a lot of things to the nation, but the nation had given him very little in return. The things that both parties had given had always been unequal. He didn't care about these things. After all, he had other requests. Besides, he had been playing his part now. Other than Wang Ji courting death, he hadn't caused any trouble. Even so, there were still people who did this. This was simply challenging his tolerance. Mr. Ren, calm down first. I really don't know much about this matter. What do those two people look like? What are their names? What's their phone number? Yang Sen was sweating a little. He could hear the anger in Ren Baqin's cold voice. He didn't want to provoke this person. Although he was backed by the nation, the other party had something that even the nation coveted. Furthermore, he also had a paradise behind him. Putting everything else aside, as long as a group of experts came over, Shanghai would be in chaos. Even if the nation could deal with them, many people would lose their lives and lose the opportunity to obtain things from them. No one could bear the consequences of such a thing. After asking Ding Jia, Ren Baqin told Yang Sen and said coldly, you have to give me an explanation for this matter. Then, he hung up the phone and sat there without saying a word. He wondered if Yongsan really didn't know about this matter or if he was just pretending. Now, it all depended on what explanation he had to give. Ding Jia shrank his head like a quail. The cold aura of the person in front of him made him feel fear from the bottom of his heart. After an hour, Yongsan called back and said, "Mr. Ren, I have found them. They aren't my people. They were instructed by someone else." "Who?" Ren Baqian asked coldly. "Mr. Ren, I can't tell you who is behind this. You can imagine some situations. There are always people who have their own ideas and do things that harm both parties. I'll report this matter to my superiors and give you an explanation. I promise that I will never do such a thing." Ren Baqian's expression softened a little and said, "I want to see an explanation and at least some sincerity. I also want to guarantee that such a thing won't happen again. Otherwise, I don't think I need to say more. At least for this period of time, our cooperation will be temporarily suspended." After speaking, Ren Baqian put down the phone. In this world, there were always people who wouldn't shed tears until they saw the coffin. If he didn't cut off this claw, another claw would reach out very quickly. After a while, Ren Baqian looked at Ding Jia and said, "Well done. I can tell you that as long as you do your job, no one can do anything to you. What's your decision?" Although Ding Jia didn't know what the person on the other side of the phone said, he could imagine it after listening to Ren Baqian's words. In addition, the power that Ren Baqian exuded when he spoke made Ding Jia's heart burn. Chapter 528. "Mr. Ren, what are you going to do?" At this moment, Yang Sen was in a terrible fix. The previous matter hadn't been resolved. Even though the higher-ups were very angry after hearing his report, some people really didn't care about the big picture. However, they found out that the person was of high status. Furthermore, the other party wasn't just one person, but an entire faction. Therefore, it wasn't that easy to deal with him. At this time, there was news that Ren Baqian had booked a plane ticket to Africa. Yang Sen was stunned when he heard this news. What was he going to do? What was he going to do in Africa? Instead of guessing, it was better to give Ren Baqian a call and ask him directly. That was how the above sentence came about. Travel. Recently, I've been very interested in how giraffes mate. You won't stop me, right? Or do you think I'll run away? Don't worry, I'll wait for an explanation. Ren Baqian smiled casually and put his phone in his pocket. At this time, he and the Empress had already arrived at Pudong Airport. The Empress was dressed in red and wore sunglasses. On the other hand, Ren Baqian was wearing an ordinary jacket and jeans. He was carrying a small bag. The two of them mixed in the crowd and didn't attract much attention. However, there was an empty space around them, which could be seen after careful observation from afar. As the two of them moved forward, everyone would subconsciously make way for them and stay away from them. This kind of small trick was the Empress's specialty. More than 20 hours later, the two of them appeared in a hot country. Congo. However, Ren Baqian's target wasn't here, but the country next to Congo. Central Africa, one of the most chaotic countries in the world. It was also one of the countries with the most firearms. It was said that a grenade cost only $1, which was cheaper than cola. This time, Ren Baqian was prepared to bring back a batch of grenades. Although their lethality was average, they were very effective in breaking the enemy's formation. Furthermore, the explosion of grenades could easily cause panic in the enemy, especially when most of them were new soldiers with poor adaptability. This kind of weapon, which was completely unknown to them, would be very effective. Unfortunately, he couldn't go back on his word since he had already said that he would temporarily suspend the contract. That would make people look down on him. After a brief search on the internet, Ren Baqian set his target here. It wasn't just for this batch of grenades, but also to find a way to contact some firearms dealers. After all, there were many powerful equipment that the country had been unwilling to give up due to various concerns. If it was just for weapons, there was actually a better place, an organization in the southern part of Turkey. After all, they were old friends. Even if they weren't friends in the past, they would be friends again this time. If he went again, it would be the second time. However, the Empress wanted to see a giraffe. She was very interested in animals with long necks after watching an episode of Animal World. Due to the aforementioned reasons, the two of them ended up here. Things went smoother than Renbochin had expected. With the help of his handgun and fists, it only took him half a day to find the person he was looking for in the Congo. It was a small arms smuggler. The gist of the story was that the guns were pointed at the heads of the hooligans, the gang members, the gang bosses, and the arms smugglers. That was the gist of it. A day and a half later, Renbochin parked his car on the prairie. In the distance, a few giraffes were slowly pacing and occasionally approaching each other tenderly. However, there were also some surprises. For example, one of them was riding on the back of the other and doing something indescribable with words. Hee hee. Renbochin laughed and quickly took out his phone to take a picture. This was a very rare sight. One had to know that giraffes were known for premature ejaculation, and a battle would end in less than 60 seconds. He just said it casually and didn't expect to actually see it. His mouth had been blessed recently. The Empress blushed slightly. She was especially angry when she heard Renbochin's mischievous laughter. She stretched out her hand and threw Renbochin out of the car. He flew in an arc and landed beside a few giraffes, scaring them away. "Ah!" Renbochin let out a long scream in the air. His voice was not so much panic as mockery, which made the Empress even more angry. The Empress looked at the giraffes that were running away in all directions, flashed, and landed on the back of one of them. No creature naturally liked to be ridden, even a gentle animal like a giraffe. After a blood-soaked battle, the giraffe gave in and carried the satisfied Empress on its back to let loose on the African savanna. From this incident, Renbochin learned a principle. Money wasn't omnipotent. At least, giraffes didn't recognize money. However, force was omnipotent. It was universal no matter the time. It didn't matter if the target was a chihuahua or a human. Renbochin followed the giraffe in his car while posting the pictures he had taken to his WeChat moments. At the same time, he observed how the Empress communicated with the giraffe. When it wanted to turn left, the Empress would say left and slap the giraffe's right neck. The giraffe's entire body tilted to the left. The opposite was also true. After such a long time, this giraffe was miraculously full of spirituality. When the Empress pointed to the east, it wouldn't go west. When the Empress asked it to chase a dog, it wouldn't chase a chicken. Renbochin took out his phone and took a picture of this scene. A giraffe carried a lady in red and ran wildly on the prairie. It was full of harmony between man and nature, and the warmth between man and animal. The Empress's mood came and went quickly. After playing for about half a day, she returned to the car and said, "Let's go back." As soon as she left, the giraffe that was happily with her ran away as if it was running for its life. Renbochin chuckled and showed her the picture of the Empress riding on the giraffe. He praised, "Very beautiful. Beautiful as a fairy." The Empress was in a good mood and wrinkled her nose. She would only reveal such a girly expression in front of Renbochin when she was in a good mood. Then, her face turned cold and she asked, "Who's a fairy?" Renbochin was speechless. Half a day later, the two of them returned with 1,500 made-in grenades. In China's 82-2 grenades returned to Dayo. The sky was already dark. Two galaxies hung in the sky like a cross. "I still feel that Dayo's sky is more beautiful," the Empress said as she looked up. It's the same principle as when one's own son is better, Renbochin added. Bang! The Empress slapped Renbochin to the wall and returned to her house with a cold look. This damned bastard was getting more and more unbridled recently. Sometimes, his words were extremely touching and sometimes infuriating. Sooner or later, he would be hung on the city wall. Renbochin fell from the wall. He stretched his lower back before smiling at the Empress and said, "Your Majesty, rest early." After which, he asked the guards to place the grenades in an empty house. With his hands behind his back, he strolled back to his room with a smile on his face. Sometimes, it was good to tease the Empress. Chapter 529. Renbochin opened his eyes and looked at the white sky outside the window. He was in a daze for a moment before muttering, "It's time." 30 days had passed. These days, there were no more martial artists coming from the south. Either they were determined to rebel, or they were blocked outside the Wang Estuary and Ghost Ridge, unable to come over. Either way, their fates were sealed. Leave no one alive. None of the practitioners from the south who were above the Manwul level were spared. All the sects were massacred. I really don't want to kill so many people. In front of me, blood flows like a river, and the river water is dyed red. However, karma is self-determined. You reap what you sow, this is the path you've chosen. Even if you have to kneel, you can walk it to the end. All I can do is send all of you on your way, Renbochin muttered to himself. Renbochin put on his official robe and walked out of the room with a serious look on his face. The humid morning air directly hit his face. The air in Zhongbei City seemed to have condensed today. In the past, one could hear a lot of sounds at this time, but at this time, it was silent. The entire Zhongbei City was filled with killing intent. Even the mosquitoes could feel the killing intent. When he walked to the Empress's room, Shi Wanya, Zongshin, Gongjing, and the others were already standing there. Renbochin cupped his hands and stood opposite Shi Wanya. Soft voices could be heard from the Empress's room. He waited for a long time, but the Empress didn't come out. All the women in the world, even someone as beautiful as Your Majesty, have to dress up before going out. It has nothing to do with beauty or ugliness. This is instinct. Renbochin smiled at Shi Wanya. Shi Wanya's face immediately darkened. You dare to say that, but we don't dare to listen. Bang! An object smashed through the window and smashed onto Shi Wanya's head. Shi Wanya was able to dodge it, but he was still hit by it and had an innocent expression on his face. Zongshin and Gongjing looked straight ahead, as if they didn't see anything. Renbochin pursed his lips and didn't say anything else. He felt that the Empress had never used anything to smash him, which clearly showed her sincerity towards him. Although there was no need to doubt this, he still felt very warm in his heart. Especially before the big battle, a warm feeling flowed through his heart. After a short while, the door was pushed open from the inside. The Empress was standing there, her red muslin swaying along with the airflow caused by the door opening. Your Majesty, it's time for the 30-day agreement, Renbochin cupped his hands and said in a deep voice. Your Majesty, everyone in the Protectorate of the South has packed up and is ready to quell the rebellion. Shi Wanya cupped his fists and reported. Your Majesty, the winged cavalry is ready to follow Your Majesty's gaze and tear apart any enemy who dares to stand in your way, Gongjing also said. Let's go, the Empress ordered coldly. Yes. A moment later, 3 bleak sounds of the beast's horn resounded in the city. Following that, the gates of the 2 barracks in the south and north of the city opened wide. Many soldiers filed out of the barracks, crossed the main road in the city, and exited through the south gate. In the early morning, the only sound in Zhongbei City was the heavy footsteps that seemed to step on everyone's heart, as well as the occasional sound of weapons colliding. In the entire Jiangbei city, everyone was behind the windows, looking at the army that was leaving the city through the gaps. Bring her along. Ren Baqin passed by Wang Baobao's courtyard, pointed inside, and instructed the guard. Get someone to bring Xing Ruo over. Also, wake Lin Chaola up. If she continues to sleep, she will grow hair, Ren Baqin instructed. Not long after, the little monk Xing Ruo appeared in front of Ren Baqin. Arhat. Xing Ruo calmly put his palms together without any joy or worry. Ren Baqin sized him up. In less than half a month, Xing Ruo already looked like a decent person. Previously, Ren Baqin had learned some news from the people who were following and protecting Xing Ruo. Given Xing Ruo's age, it was hard to trust him. In particular, Buddhism had never appeared in this land, and the people didn't know anything about it. However, perhaps due to the recent chaos and the aboriginals taking over the city, the commoners in the city were filled with fear and confusion about the future. Under such circumstances, Xing Ruo had attracted some commoners these days. There weren't many of them, only a few dozen. However, this was already a big step for Xing Ruo. At his age, it wasn't easy to attract a few dozen people to listen to him preach about Buddhism. We are about to set off. Are you coming with us? Ren Baqin asked faintly. No, the commoners in this city also need the protection of Buddhism. Xing Ruo shook his head and replied softly. You will have to rely on yourself in the future, Ren Baqin said. Xing Ruo nodded gently. Then, he raised his head and said pitifully, Arhat, please give me some money. You are just a monk. What use do you have for money? Ren Baqin was amused by Xing Ruo's change in attitude. Previously, he was still acting like a proper person, but now, he was acting like a thief. Have you practiced face changing before? I have to find someone to carve the statue of Buddha first. Otherwise, these people won't know what Buddha looks like and who they are worshipping. Xing Ruo said truthfully. I have even drawn the image of Buddha. As he spoke, he took out a piece of paper from his pocket. Ren Baqin glanced at it and thought, not bad. If I carve it according to this, they won't know who they are worshipping. Ren Baqin asked someone to take some silver and give it to Xing Ruo. Xing Ruo happily took the silver and found someone to carve the statue. After Ren Baqin left, he didn't seem to think about promoting Buddhism here alone. Ren Baqin didn't see any worry on his face. He called for the two practitioners who had been following and protecting Xing Ruo. You don't have to secretly protect him in the future. Shave your heads and convert to Buddhism, Ren Baqin said as he looked at the two men below. Ha! Both of them were stunned. In the future, if someone comes looking for trouble with Xing Ruo, the two of you will handle it. If Xing Ruo comes looking for trouble with others, the two of you will handle it. As for your sect, I'll send someone to inform you. After a few years, when things have settled down here, you can go back. At that time, you can enter the rearguard commandery. Let someone report to me, and I will arrange a position for you, Ren Baqin said directly, not giving the two a chance to refuse. After he finished speaking, he personally picked up a knife from the side and shaved their heads clean. Two monks with bloody heads were fresh out of the oven. They grimaced in pain but didn't dare to resist. Go, Ren Baqin said. The two bowed their heads and retreated. Fortunately, Ren Baqin promised to personally arrange jobs for them in the rearguard commandery after their mission, which gave them some hope. After arranging everything, Ren Baqin walked out of the door and saw Lin Chaola leaning against the wall, yawning. There was a moldy smell on her body. The guards in the residence had also packed up their things. Where's Her Majesty? Ren Baqin asked. She has already left. Set off. Ren Baqin ordered. When he left the residence, there were still some people standing by the roadside waiting for him. The people from the rearguard commandery who were still in the city consciously followed him and set off. There were more than 200 people gathered together. Not far away, Zhui Qing and Qing Yun's sword stood on the roof with the people from the hidden village and nodded at Renbaqian. Then, dozens of figures leaped from rooftop to rooftop and left. These people didn't belong to the rearguard commandery, but they wouldn't stay far away from Renbaqian. In fact, they would even listen to Renbaqian's instructions at certain times. They were considered a group of people with relatively special identities. After Renbaqian set off, the rest of the practitioners finally heaved a sigh of relief. These days, they almost didn't dare to breathe here. Now, these people had finally left and seemed to have forgotten about them. They hoped that Renbaqian would forget about them forever. Chapter 530. The Aboriginal army took a day to stop and set up camp 5 kilometers north of the Wang estuary. The place where everyone stopped was a hill, and in front of them was a dense forest. On both sides of the road were trees that were several feet tall, and a person could wrap their arms around them. There was only a 4-meter-wide dirt road that passed through the forest, and at the end of the road were 2 tall mountains in the distance. Renbaqian met Zhui Qing and the others as soon as he arrived. How was it? Was the trip successful? What about the others? Renbaqian asked. Thanks to these items, we were able to find out information about the other party from a distance. We mainly investigated at night, and with the night vision devices, we were able to easily discover the other party's hidden sentries. Although we were detected twice during this period, we retreated ahead of time and didn't even encounter them. Zhui Qing smiled. These binoculars and night vision devices were really useful. In particular, the infrared night vision devices were extremely useful in the jungle at night. Furthermore, they could easily find out the approximate number of people within a certain distance, which reduced the danger of this investigation. In addition, the Empress had killed the 2 spirit will experts, so they didn't encounter any danger. As for the others, they are still monitoring the other party's movements. We will come back first to report the news to you. It's good that everything went smoothly. Renbaqian nodded. What's the situation ahead? Zhui Qing took out a hand-drawn map. On it was an abstract forest and 2 tall mountains, and various roads were indicated. On the mountain, there were many points marked on it. Zhui Qing explained to Renbaqian while holding the map. Sir, there aren't any ambushes in the forest. The other party is all on the mountain ahead. To bypass the mountain and reach the Wang estuary, they need to go through a mountain road that is about 6 steps wide. On both sides of the road are steep slopes. This road has a total of 2,600 steps. After this road, they will pass through the gap between 2 mountains. On the right side is a steep slope, but on the left side is a cliff that is 300 meters high. If they fall, they will be smashed to pieces. Along the way, they have piled up a lot of boulders and broken wood on both sides of the steep slopes. When the army passes through, they will push these boulders and broken wood down. In addition, there are 8,000 soldiers on the mountain, many of whom are archers. In addition, there are more than 70 earth will experts and nearly 1,000 man will experts from various sects and the army. As for the spirit will experts, I haven't seen them. If we attack by force, I'm afraid there will be many casualties. Renbaqian muttered to himself for a while. It was more or less what he had expected. As long as one wasn't an idiot, they would be able to come up with this method of rolling wood and stones. It was mainly because the 2 mountains in front of them had gentle slopes towards the south, while the mountains in front of them were all steep slopes. It would be easy for the other party to ascend the mountain from the other side, but it would be troublesome for everyone to ascend the mountain from this direction. Only the winged cavalry could do it. By the time the winged cavalry expended a lot of effort to climb up, what awaited them were numerous earth wheel and man will experts, as well as thousands of soldiers. He was afraid that the winged cavalry would only exist in name after this battle. Renbaqian pondered for a while before bringing this map to look for the Empress. Moments later, Shi Wanya, Zhong Xin, the generals of the Protectorate of the South, and Gong Zheng all received the news and rushed to the vicinity of the Empress's imperial carriage. Ren Baqian drew a map on the ground that the people from the rearguard commandery had investigated, marked the locations, and explained everything that they knew so far. The Empress then asked, "What do you think?" The Empress rarely expressed her opinions on these matters. It had always been one of her strengths to hand over professional matters to others. "I will first take the experts from the army up the mountain and occupy an open space. The winged cavalry can ascend from there. With me leading the way, the other party definitely won't be able to stop us. When the winged cavalry and the soldiers ascend the mountain, we will be able to drive them away in one fell swoop," Shi Wanya said. Ren Baqian nodded slightly. If they encountered such a situation on Earth, it would indeed be more difficult. However, they were in Dayo at this time, and the most prominent feature here was their superior individual strength. Although the Aboriginals didn't have the advantage in terms of military strength, they had the absolute advantage in terms of experts. With Shi Wanya, Zhong Xin, Qing Ping, and other Cardinal Heaven experts ascending the mountain, they would be able to resist the attack of the other party and clear an open space. After that, the winged cavalry and the soldiers from the Protectorate of the South would ascend the mountain. Although Rinpochen felt that the other party wouldn't have thought of this method was the simplest and most practical. It was to break through everything with brute force. No matter what the other party's plans were, they would crush them with absolute brute force. That's settled then. The Empress nodded. That night, just as Rinpochen went to rest, someone came to report that there was movement on the mountain. A moment later, someone came to report that many of the other party's practitioners had already descended the mountain and were rushing toward the place where the army had set up camp. Only the practitioners? Ren Baqian asked. After receiving an affirmative answer, he asked a guard to inform Shi Wanya. If he guessed correctly, since there were only practitioners, it definitely wasn't a real night attack. After thinking for a while, Rinpochen said to the guard, "If they really attack, remember to bring me to Her Majesty. As long as you don't see them, don't worry about me." After he finished speaking, he found 2 rags to plug his ears and went to sleep. After Rinpochen fell asleep, a series of battle cries could be heard coming from the forest just after midnight. Countless figures rushed out of the forest and threw all kinds of hidden weapons at the barracks. There were darts, flying knives, gold beads, and silver beads. These people had just come out of the forest, but before they could reach the camp, hundreds of burly men jumped out from behind the fence and gave them a good beating. "Retreat!" Seeing this situation, the other party immediately shouted. Hundreds of corpses were left outside the camp while the others retreated into the forest. "There's no need to chase." Gong Zheng stopped the winged cavalry from continuing the chase. After a while, peace was restored in the camp. In the forest, dozens of people gathered together and said, "They are prepared. It seems like they have hidden sentries in the forest. What should we do now? Let's go back. Since they are prepared, continuing will only harm their lives," someone said. "No, let's go again. They know that this time, there should be hidden sentries who tipped them off. If we go back again, we will definitely be able to surprise them." "That's right. Even if we can't hurt them, we can make them unable to rest and attack tomorrow. The longer they stop, the greater the pressure on their rations." Someone agreed from the side. Then, everyone's gaze fell on the person in the seat of honor. "Let's rest for 2 hours before disturbing the enemy." Rinpochen was sleeping soundly when he was shaken awake. In his dream, he was whispering sweet nothings to the Empress, which made him feel uneasy. However, he was woken up at this time and was immediately furious. "Have they attacked?" "They didn't attack. However, there is news that they are resting in the forest," the guard hurriedly said. "Inform General Shi that there will be another night attack in a while. Renbochin mumbled and went back to his dream to whisper sweet nothings to the Empress. During these 2 hours, the forest was quiet, and even the birds and beasts didn't make any noise. Time's up. Set off. Remember, disturb the enemy, don't fight them, someone in the forest ordered. Then, a group of people rushed out of the forest again, and a wave of battle cries could be heard in the camp. Hundreds of sleep-deprived burly men jumped out of the fence and gave them another beating. Another 200 corpses were left behind, and everyone retreated into the forest with resentment. They are obviously prepared. There is no chance for us to attack tonight. Let's go back. As the ancient said, you can do it once, twice, but not thrice. Anything can be done once or twice, but definitely not a third time. I believe the other party thinks so too. They must have hidden sentries in the forest. If we continue to stay here, their every move will be detected. We can let some people go back first and deliberately make the noise a little louder to create the illusion that we have all left. The forest is so dark that we can't even see our fingers. I don't believe that they will know that there are still people here. After a while, 300 to 400 people left the forest with a loud noise. Inform Sir that there are still about half of them in the forest. I'm afraid that they still haven't given up their evil intentions, a person on a tree branch in the distance said as he looked at the red dot in the distance with a night vision goggles. 2 hours later, hundreds of people rushed out of the forest. Darts, flying knives, golden marbles, silver marbles, and a lot of hidden weapons were thrown at the military camp in front as if they were free. Battle cries soared to the sky. In the darkness, no one could figure out how many people were attacking. Chapter 531. Renbochin opened his eyes and was a little annoyed. He was fully prepared for this night, but he still didn't sleep well. Anyone who was woken up every 2 hours would not be able to sleep well. Renbochin yawned as he walked out of the tent. He casually asked the guard, "How was last night?" "The enemy came to harass us 3 times and left behind 400 corpses. The people from the rearguard commandery have examined the corpses. 11 of them were earth will experts and the rest were man will experts," the guard said loudly. Renbochin didn't expect the enemy to send a wave of heads before he could even attack. He was originally worried that there were too many experts on the other side of the mountain. In the end, nearly 1,000 man will experts were killed just like that. Did the enemy's higher-ups have an insider? Renbochin called for Zhucheng and asked in surprise, "Did some of the people we sent to the south to persuade them to surrender sneak into the enemy's ranks?" Zhucheng was a little puzzled as he didn't know why Renbochin asked this question. He answered truthfully, "Sir, I'm not sure about this. No one left a note or anything like that, and I have no way of knowing the internal situation of the enemy." "Oh, you may leave then." Renbochin dismissed Zhucheng and went to see the Empress. After breakfast, Shiwanya sent a portion of the soldiers from the Protectorate of the South to open up a path in the dense forest ahead. They had to at least double the current mountain road and open up an open space. For an entire day, as the towering trees fell with a loud rumble, bundles of vines were brought back from the forest, and some people weaved them into ropes. These ropes were as thick as an arm and were very strong. They wouldn't break even if they were to bear a weight of 500 kilograms. The only problem was that they were too heavy. After all, these weren't hay, but vines filled with water. A rope that was 100 meters long would weigh at least 300 kilograms. After removing the gentle slope that was more than 100 meters long, the remaining mountain wall that was difficult to climb was at least 300 meters high. This meant that a rope would weigh more than 500 kilograms. Even the winged cavalry could carry this thing and walk as if they were flying. However, only a few cardinal heaven experts like Shiwanya and Zongshan would be able to carry this thing up a mountain that was close to a vertical cliff without affecting their movements. On the morning of the 3rd day, the army set off again, passing through the forest and arriving at the foot of the 2 mountain peaks. Renbochin raised his head and looked up with his binoculars. He saw that the mountainside, which was 400 to 500 meters high, was filled with piles of rocks, rolling logs, and other things. There were even people craning their necks to look down. "Your Majesty, please allow me to drive away the enemy." Shiwanya cupped his fists in front of the Empress's carriage. "Permission granted," the Empress said. "General Shi, please wait a moment," Renbochin said to stop him. "Is there anything else, Sir Ren?" Shiwanya turned his head and asked. "Distribute some things to the winged cavalry." As Renbochin spoke, he got someone to drag out his grenades and called Gongjing over to distribute them. Gongjing was overjoyed when he saw this familiar thing. "Sir Ren, this thing is very useful. This battle will definitely make those thieves on the mountain wish they could grow 2 more legs." Renbochin pondered for a while, took out more than 10 skunk bombs, and handed them to Gongjing. "These are extremely powerful and will hurt both sides. Try not to use them if possible. Use them if the situation isn't good." Gongjing looked at the skunk bomb in his hand. It was indeed different from those grenades, but he didn't know how powerful such a small thing could be. "Let's set off." Shiwanya saw that Renbochin handed a batch of things to Gongjing and didn't ask any more questions. After Renbochin finished speaking, he gave the order to set off. Renbochin took the opportunity to call Lin Chala over and set off with Shiwanya and the others. Shiwanya, Zongshin, and Qing Ping were in front, followed by some personal guards. Behind them were the winged cavalry, and the ordinary soldiers followed from a distance. Along the way, Shiwanya and the other 2 couldn't help but look for places to land on the mountain wall. Release. Just as everyone set foot on the gentle slope, a dark cloud suddenly appeared in mid-air, and countless arrows rained down. "Give me the rope. You guys stand down," Shiwanya shouted. He lifted the huge rope that was coiled into a disc as if he was lifting a house. "Lin Chala. It's your turn." Renbochin reached out and poked Lin Chala's waist. Lin Chala immediately jumped a few times and landed in front of the steep slope. She then began to move her body and climbed up half the height in a few flashes. Fall. Suddenly, a few boulders and rolling logs that were bigger than humans came crashing down toward Lin Chala. The boulders that were bigger than humans came crashing down from a height of a few hundred meters. With their own weight and gravity, they smashed toward the 3 of them with great power. The deafening sound could be heard from afar, as if a landslide was occurring. However, Lin Chala's movements were more dexterous than a monkey's. It didn't take much effort for her to move around on the mountain wall and easily pass through the gaps between the boulders and the rolling logs. The falling boulders caused a little trouble for Shiwanya and the others. The 3 of them dodged the boulders, placed the rope on the ground, held one end in each hand, and leaped high into the air. They landed on the foothold they had previously found and then changed direction to jump in another direction. If Lin Chala's movements were more like the agility of a feline, then the 3 of them were completely like gorillas. Every time they landed, they would crush a piece of rock and then bounce high up into the air with great strength. As soon as Lin Chala leaped onto the platform on the mountainside, she caused a rain of blood among the ordinary soldiers. Almost every second, someone's throat was torn, and fresh blood spurted out from the neck with a slight sound of air leaking. At this moment, a loud whistle was heard. Soon after, the sound of heavy objects rubbing against each other could be heard from behind the platform. Lin Chala clawed at the head of a soldier, then turned around in the air and landed on the back of another soldier. She only stayed on him for a moment before she leaped high into the air and pounced toward another soldier. However, she had goosebumps all over her body when she was in midair. This was because she saw a huge creature crawling toward her in front of her. It was a huge python. It was as thick as 2 water tanks and was about 2 meters long. Its entire body was black and yellow, and as it slithered on the ground, it knocked into the soldiers along the way. Many of them immediately heard the sound of bones breaking. Ugh! Lin Chala's pupils turned vertical as she lowered her body to the ground. She completely ignored the soldiers who were fleeing in the distance and focused all her attention on the huge python on the ground in front of her. As soon as she saw that thing, she felt as if she had encountered something that she hated. The huge python also stopped in front of Lin Chala and raised its head. Its pair of yellow eyes exuded coldness and cruelty. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Shiwanya and the other two arrived at the mountainside and saw the huge python first. The three of them ignored it and split up to find a place to wrap the rope. However, at this moment, a reddish-brown figure pounced toward Shiwanya like lightning. It waved its arms in the air and smashed toward Shiwanya. Boom! Shiwanya and the other party's fists collided, and both of them took a few steps back almost at the same time. Shiwanya fixed his eyes and saw a monkey with reddish-brown long fur, which was about the size of a human, baring its teeth at him. One had to know that Shiwanya's strength was more than 2,500 kilograms, but this monkey was able to fight evenly with him. It was truly shocking. Furthermore, this monkey was extremely fast, at least a little faster than Shiwanya himself. He had been stationed in the south for more than 20 years, but he didn't know that there was such a strange beast in Tianjing Basin. At this moment, Zongshen and Qing Ping were also surrounded by 6 people. They were the spirit will experts who had appeared at Mount Wu. At the foot of the mountain, the Empress suddenly looked up from her carriage and said coldly, "They have encountered an expert." Before she finished speaking, she appeared 100 meters away in a flash. Renbochin only saw a red shadow flash a few times in the distance before disappearing. Soon after, a loud roar was heard from the mountaintop, accompanied by the roar of a huge beast and the hissing of a huge snake. Renbochin sighed. No matter how much he prepared, it wouldn't be as good as the Empress doing it herself. In such a world, he sometimes felt quite helpless. After a full 2 hours, the Empress returned from the mountain. "Your Majesty is invincible, and the unification of the world is just around the corner," Renbochin exclaimed. He then saw that the Empress's expression wasn't right and asked, "Your Majesty, what did you encounter on the mountain?" "A few strange beasts escaped." The Empress looked a little unhappy. She was still brooding over the fact that the enemy had escaped from her hands. Strange beasts? Renbochin was surprised. To be called strange beasts and be able to escape from the Empress, could they be like the Kirin in the palace? A monkey, a snake, and a crow general. As the Empress spoke, Lin Chala appeared near them, threw 2 pieces of food to Renbochin, and said hatefully, "I want to roast them and eat them." Chapter 532. The crow general was actually a type of bird. It was a giant black bird with long feathers on its head. This kind of bird was generally between 3 to 4 meters tall. It was as fast as lightning and extremely strong. Its feathers were like steel, and its claws could tear through metal. The only drawback was that due to its weight, it could only run and jump on the ground like a mountain-gazing bird. It could not fly at all. It was said that there weren't many of these beasts, and they were generally at the earth will level. Very few of them had reached the spirit will level. However, the one that the Empress encountered on the mountain was stronger than an ordinary spirit will expert, which was considered rare. His speed was especially fast. Carrying that giant snake on his back, even the Empress couldn't catch up with him. Renbochin listened to the Empress explain the situation in a few words and was a little surprised. In his mind, he imagined the crow general as a pitch-black mountain-gazing bird. Where did these strange beasts come from in Tianjing Basin? When they were at Mount Wu, it could be said that almost all the experts from Tianjing Basin had come out in full force. They didn't expect that 3 non-humans would jump out at this time. "That's not a giant snake, it's a Mongshan," Lin Chaola corrected the Empress seriously. You know about it. Ren Baqin was even more surprised. Saying that Lin Chaola ate, slept, and ate after she was full was a completely true description. Furthermore, he had been staying in the palace ever since he was picked up. Other than coming out with him a few times, he had basically never come into contact with the outside world. It was truly surprising that he knew about this exotic beast. Why is it called Iron Head Mongshan? Is it because their heads are more iron-headed? For some reason, Ren Baqin found this name very interesting. Anyway, that's his name. His head is also hard, and he looks annoying, Lin Chaola muttered. As for more than that, she didn't have any impression. However, when she saw the giant snake, this name naturally popped up in her mind. Roast it for a while longer and sprinkle some wine on it. Otherwise, it will taste sour. Lin Chaola added after thinking for a while. Ren Baqin put the snake meat aside and asked someone to bring Zhu Qing and Qing Yun's sword over. Greetings, Your Majesty. Both of them cupped their fists at the Empress, nodded at Ren Baqin, and asked, Sir Ren, are you looking for us? Do you know what happened on the mountainside just now? Ren Baqin asked. Experts are fighting. The two of them turned to look at the Empress as they spoke. Do you know about the Crow General, Mongshan, and a monkey with long reddish-brown fur? Ren Baqin asked. Just now, Protector General Shi and the others encountered these three strange beasts on the mountain. They are much stronger than ordinary spirit wool experts. Even in Tianjing Basin, they shouldn't be unknown, right? There's such a thing. Both of them were shocked. Tianjing Basin actually had such a strange beast. Sir Ren, please explain in detail. Ren Baqin described the three strange beasts that he had heard from the Empress, and both of them looked pensive. What have you two thought of? Ren Baqin immediately asked when he saw their expressions. The Empress also shifted her attention to them and wanted to hear what they had to say. That giant snake, it's not a giant snake, it's a Mongshan. Lin Chaola snorted and corrected him. Oh, that Mount Mongshan should be the strange beast worshipped by the six doors. As for the other two, I've never heard of them. I'm afraid that they're related to the six doors, Qing Yun's sword said in a low voice. What's the origin of the six doors? This was the first time Ren Baqin had heard of this sect. Whether it's the experts or the martial arts of this sect, they aren't outstanding. They have always been in a remote place in the south and rarely interact with outsiders. It's just that there's a rumor that the founder of the sect once obtained a strange snake and has been worshipping it since the death of the founder. Although the experts and martial arts of the six doors aren't outstanding, they are extremely good at communicating with wild beasts. It's called the six doors, but in fact, it should be the six beasts. The elephant soldiers, monkey soldiers, and insect soldiers are the ones that people pay attention to in the past. Although they aren't strong, they are extremely difficult to deal with. In particular, most of the insect soldiers are highly poisonous insects, and anyone who gets hit will die immediately. Back then, the southern metropolis wanted to recruit the six doors but was rejected. Your Majesty, did you see anyone wearing a brightly colored feather crown on the mountainside? Zhu Qing asked. The Empress remained silent as if she hadn't heard anything. Ren Baqin knew from her expression that she definitely didn't care about the people on the mountaintop. Otherwise, with the Empress's photographic memory, well, he couldn't make it up anymore. Did you see them? Ren Baqin asked Lin Chaola. I only saw that iron-headed mountain, Lin Chaola mumbled, then yawned and said, I'm going to sleep for a while. Wake me up when the meat is ready. As she spoke, she found a tent and went to sleep. Although Lin Chaola and the Empress didn't see the person with the brightly colored feather crown that Zhu Qing mentioned, Ren Baqin still felt that these strange beasts were related to the six doors. The monkey soldiers, the reddish-brown long-haired monkey, and the iron-headed mountain, there shouldn't be a second possibility. Where is this sect? How many people are there? What else do you know? The sect is in the southwest, near the cliff. I don't know much about it except that this sect is extremely low-key and never interacts with outsiders. However, I heard rumors that they use living people as sacrifices. I once thought of going there to get rid of evil for the people, but later gave up due to various reasons. Living people as sacrifices are used to feed wild beasts, especially that giant snake. I wonder how many lives it has devoured over the years, Qin Yun's sword said. Renbochin felt that it was fortunate that he didn't go. If he had gone, he would have been fed to the snake. After all, he could tell from the conversation between the Empress and Lin Chaola that these strange beasts weren't weak. Even Qin Yun's sword wouldn't be a match for any of them. It's not a giant snake, it's an iron-headed mountain. Lin Chaola shouted from the tent with hazy eyes. Got it. Renbochin waved his hand. Thank you for the information. Renbochin cupped his hands at them. It's all right. Goodbye. The two cupped their hands and left. After they left, the Empress said, "These people can still be of some use to you." Even though she said it in an indifferent tone, Renbochin could hear a trace of approval in her tone. Although it was just a trace of approval, it was already a good improvement. After the Empress went up the mountain, many experts fought, and the warriors and soldiers on the mountain had already run away from the other side. There was no one to stop them at the cliff, so the winged cavalry climbed up along the cliff. They were inspecting the mountainside and throwing down the rolling logs and boulders that were prepared on the mountain. The road was only 4 meters wide. With a little more force, they could directly throw the boulders out of the road, so they didn't have to worry about destroying the road. Renbochin also sent Baihu from the rearguard commandery to the mountainside to investigate. At night, most of the winged cavalry retreated, leaving only a small number of Baihu and a small number of Baihu to guard the mountainside. Chapter 533. In the residence of the warlord of Shuiyang City, dozens of people were sitting in a hole. At the head of the table were 3 people. One of them was a handsome young man in his 20s with a resolute face. He was the new chief of the North Alliance, Tai Zai. Beside him was Xia Kuan, the capital of the southern metropolis. Next to Xia Kuan was the flower queen of the green bellflower, Rao Yu. However, no matter who saw Rao Yu's 300 to 400 kilograms body, they would feel that the name Rao Yu was a waste. In particular, many experts of the older generation couldn't help but recall the flower queen of the previous generation every time they saw her. She was really talented. Below the 3 of them, on the left was a young man who wore a bright-colored cape woven from bird feathers, revealing his bronze-colored chest, and a bright-colored feather crown on his head. Below him were a few others who were similarly dressed. Opposite him were 6 spirit wool experts. 3 of them were pale and had suffered serious injuries in the short fight just now. This Qi Zixiao is really powerful, and Shi Wanya isn't easy to deal with either. The talents of those barbarians are really terrifying. A spirit wool expert with a pale face said. Recalling the short fight just now, he had to admit that the other party was indeed very strong. We still have to thank Mr. Bu and the others for their help. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for us to resist them alone. Another person cupped his hands and said to the few people wearing bird feather shawls and feather crowns opposite him. Not only him, but the others also cupped their hands and expressed their gratitude. Although these people, who were called Mr. Bu, weren't very strong and couldn't even be ranked among the earth will experts, what caught people's attention wasn't these people themselves, but the strange beasts that were slightly stronger than the spirit will experts. With the help of these strange beasts, although they still weren't a match for those barbarians, they at least had the ability to protect themselves. If Qi Zixiao hadn't taken action, the others wouldn't have been a match for them. Before Xia Kuan invited these people, no one expected the 6 doors to be so powerful. Everyone had always regarded them as a small sect that was proficient in communicating with and domesticating beasts and insects. Although this was true in some ways, the strength of the strange beasts in the 6 doors was too unexpected. What was even more puzzling was that the 6 doors clearly had such powerful strength, so why did they hide in a corner and not reveal themselves at all? Qi Zixiao is indeed very powerful. Tai Xingjun has suffered serious injuries. It will take some time for him to recover, said the man wearing a bird feather cape, who was sitting next to the leaders of the 3 factions. Xia Kuan understood and said, I will provide some sinners to Mr. Bu to heal Tai Xingjuan's injuries as soon as possible. Mr. Bu can rest assured. A smile appeared on Mr. Bu's bronzed face. Tai Xingjuan's self-healing ability was actually pretty good, but he would recover faster if he ate more people. The others acted as if they did not hear Xia Kuan's words. Those barbarians thought that they had won this battle, but they probably didn't expect to fall right into our trap. We wanted them to think that the rolling logs and rocks were part of our plan, so that they would lower their guard. If we succeed this time, Mr. Ning will have done a great service. Another person laughed. If it wasn't for Mr. Bu, I wouldn't have been able to do this even if I thought of it. A young man with a bashful smile was sitting next to a few spirit wool experts. He looked to be about 25 or 26 years old and wasn't very strong. However, he was sitting below a few spirit wool experts and above the generals of the major factions. From this, one could see Mr. Ning's status. Speaking of which, I still have to apologize to Mr. Ning. Tai Zai smiled. It's all right. This matter was really unexpected. I didn't expect that gigolo to impersonate someone from the Yun Nation and sneak into your midst. Fortunately, it didn't cause too much trouble. Mr. Ning laughed. Speaking of this matter, everyone's expression immediately became strange. Not only did it cause trouble, but it was also huge trouble. Thinking of the suffocating smell from those days, everyone couldn't bear to look back. At this time, the side of the mountain near the mountain path has almost been hollowed out. As long as they pass through there and let the death warriors break the support left behind, half of the mountain will collapse. Even the winged cavalry will find it difficult to escape such an earth-shattering change. Even if Qi Zixiao is fine in the end, do you think she can take down the 3 River Valley by herself? Mr. Ning smiled somewhat contentedly. Mr. Ning is right. In this battle, Mr. Ning and Mr. Bu are the main contributors. After Xia Kuan finished speaking, the entire hall burst into laughter. When the time comes, we will teach those traitors a lesson. I didn't expect the dignified Qingyun's sword to be the first to surrender to the barbarians, someone said resentfully, and many others echoed him. Wait until they survive the earth-shattering disaster, someone laughed. That's right. Your Majesty, the meat is ready. It's time for dinner. Renbaqian sat in front of the fire and shouted toward the carriage not far behind him. At this moment, there were a few pieces of mutton on top of the fire. After being sprinkled with spices, they emitted a fragrance that made many people secretly salivate. Renbaqian smelled the aroma and said, with my cooking skills, even if I were to become a chef, I would still be at the level of an imperial chef. As he spoke, the Empress sat down beside him with a wine bottle in her arms. Your Majesty, eat while it's hot. Renbaqian took a piece of mutton that was full of holes and placed it on a plate for the Empress. Just as the Empress was about to reach out, she suddenly felt something and turned her head to look behind her. What a fragrant smell! A voice came from afar. Who's that? The surrounding guards immediately drew their swords and looked in the direction of the voice. However, Renbaqian was surprised to find that there were 2 more people beside him. One of them was an old man, or perhaps an old beggar. His hair was a mess, and he had a messy beard. There were a few pieces of rags hanging on his body, and only his pants were slightly intact. However, the pants below his knees were missing, and there were a few holes on them. Beside him was a woman dressed in a flowery embroidered robe. She had a bewitching face and a flower in her hair. This lady looked somewhat familiar. "Sir Ren, sorry to disturb you." The lady looked at Renbochin coquettishly, but her eyes seemed to contain water and were sparkling. "Ning Kaichin." Renbochin was surprised. "That's me. However, I have already changed my name to Ning Kaichin," Ning Kaichin said coquettishly. "Who is this?" Renbochin looked at the old beggar, who had already taken a piece of lamb from the fire and was wolfing it down, completely ignoring the Empress's cold gaze. Could this person's surname be Hongqi? "Who are you?" Many guards surrounded the fire with swords in their hands. "All of you can leave." The Empress stared at the old beggar and waved her hand to drive the guards away. "I'll treat you to a drink." The Empress threw the wine bottle to the old beggar, who unceremoniously raised his head and drank a mouthful, exclaiming, "Good wine." Renbochin felt that there was something wrong with the Empress's reaction. One had to know that the Empress had always been domineering and fierce. Now that someone had eaten her barbecued meat, she actually gave him wine to drink. "After eating my dinner and drinking my wine, you will show me the strength of the world's most powerful expert," the Empress said after seeing him drink half of the wine in one gulp. "The world's most powerful expert?" Renbochin's voice almost pierced the sky, showing how surprised he was. The third most powerful expert in the world was Li Yuanzhu, and the fourth most powerful expert was Tingyu, who was now the Empress. Only the first and second most powerful experts in the world were rarely heard of. It was said that these two people hadn't appeared in the world for decades. If they weren't on the list of the world's most powerful experts, many people would have thought that they were long dead. She didn't expect this old beggar to be the world's most powerful expert. Renbochin didn't think that the Empress would recognize the wrong person, especially the world's most powerful expert. However, why was Ning Kaichin with him? Renbochin looked at Ning Kaichin with doubt in his eyes. "This time, I brought the shueka to exchange for the stun baton," Ning Kaichin said in high spirits. Then, his face fell and he continued, "I met this person on the way, and he insisted that my green bead take him to the sky." "Then bring him." Renbochin didn't understand Ning Kaichin's expression. "Let's not talk about the fact that a spirit sword can't bring someone to the sky. Even a sword master like me can't do it. What's important is that my green bead has developed acrophobia since the last trip to Dayo." Pfft. He almost vomited blood. He had never heard of a flying sword suffering from acrophobia. Chapter 534. The Empress, Renbochin, and Ning Kaichin stopped after exchanging a few words. They sat by the bonfire and looked at the number one expert in the world stuffing mutton into his stomach as if he hadn't eaten for a few months. After a few minutes, he finished a large piece of mutton and then reached for the second piece. Given the Empress's protective character, it was rare that she didn't say anything. She just waited quietly, constantly adjusting her body's condition, and her eyes were filled with excitement. Renbochin had known her for so long, but rarely saw such an expression on her face. It seemed that the long-lost number one expert in the world had appeared in front of her, and her fighting spirit was boiling. After half an hour, the man finished the mutton that Renbochin had roasted for the Empress. He then exclaimed, "I haven't eaten such delicious food in a long time. Kid, I see that you have a good constitution and are a talent. Do you want to follow me to find the stairway to the sky? You want a chef, right?" Renbochin laughed. He could tell that this person wasn't difficult to talk to. "Li Fu, you have eaten and drunk the wine. Let me see the strength of the world's number one expert." The Empress stood up from the ground with an eager look on her face. Renbochin laughed again. He didn't expect the name of the world's number one expert to be so down-to-earth. It really did match his attire. Whether it was the Empress, Hongwu, Tingyu, or even Zhui Qing, they all had the aura of an expert. However, no one would believe that the person in front of them was the world's #1 expert if they didn't say so. Don't look for me for a fight. I don't know how to do it. I'm just a blacksmith, and my blacksmithing skills have been abandoned for many years. Li Fu waved his hand. I smelled it today and couldn't resist my gluttony. Don't be so stingy, little girl. The Empress's face turned green as she swatted at Li Fu with her palm. The surrounding air was rolled up by this palm, and the area within a radius of 100 meters seemed to have become a whirlpool with the Empress as the center. Goodbye, little girl. Li Fu floated away from the Empress's palm in a flash and fell into the darkness. At this time, Renbochin realized that Li Fu actually had a black iron rod in his hand. However, it was much shorter than the iron rod, about 70 to 80 centimeters long, and there was a turtle head at the front. Seeing that Li Fu had run away, the Empress was furious. It was rare for her to meet the world's top expert, and she wanted to test the strength of the world's #1. However, the other party didn't even take a single blow and ran away just like that, causing her to feel extremely disappointed. He then raised his voice and said, Li Fu, aren't you looking for the stairway to heaven? The voice was loud and clear, and it traveled directly into the forest ahead. The next moment, Li Fu landed in front of the bonfire and said solemnly, Little girl, do you know? I don't know, but I know how to ascend to the sky. The Empress said with a strange expression. Is that true? Don't lie to me. Li Fu's face immediately revealed a look of surprise, but he was also afraid that the other party would lie to him. Speak. The Empress glanced at Renbochin. Your Majesty, are you referring to a plane or a rocket? Renbochin felt that the Empress suddenly asked him to speak. Is there really something that can allow me to ascend to the heavens? Li Fu was in disbelief when he heard Renbochin's tone. First, tell me what you want to do in the sky. These two functions were different. Do you want to ascend to the sky to take a look or what? If you just want to ascend to the sky to take a look, a paraglider should be enough, Renbochin asked curiously. I want to find the gods in the sky. Li Fu's face was overflowing with murderous intent when he talked about this. Are there really gods? Renbochin asked. Although there were many strange things in this world, he was still skeptical about the existence of gods. After all, there were very few theories about gods in Dayo, and he naturally couldn't come into contact with them. He heard that there were a lot more stories about gods in Great Xia. Also, what was this world's #1 expert trying to do with his murderous expression? How much hatred did he have? Or did he want to pierce through the sky so that it would no longer cover his eyes? At his age, he should be past the second stage of middle school, right? There must be. Li Fu said with a murderous look. However, coupled with his tattered clothes and the way he looked, people always felt that he was a lunatic. Can you tell me what you know about gods? Renbochin asked curiously. He was very interested in this topic. No matter who it was, they would be interested in something like gods. In particular, Li Fu was the world's #1 expert. He had been looking for a way to ascend to the heavens for so many years and wanted to find the gods in the sky. He should know a lot of things that ordinary people didn't. Do you really know how to ascend to the heavens? Li Fu stared at Renbochin with his eyes wide open. I do know how to ascend to the heavens. However, I'm afraid it will take some time to implement it. It will take at least 30 to 50 years to make that artifact that can ascend to the heavens, Renbochin said after thinking for a while. 30 to 50 years was the fastest speed. It was only possible to make a rocket by directly moving all kinds of mature technology from Earth and accelerating development. Of course, 30 to 50 years would be at least 100 years on Earth. Perhaps by then, there would already be small equipment that could easily send people to outer space. As for what would happen if he couldn't find the gods in outer space, Renbochin didn't even want him to come back. In fact, Renbochin said this with another intention. He was the world's #1 expert. If he could keep this world's #1 expert in Dayo as a fighter. Although it wasn't very possible, there might really be a chance since Li Fu was so eager to ascend to the heavens. Even if he only made a move once in a while, it would be enough. What should I do? Li Fu landed beside Renbochin in a flash and grabbed his shoulder. Renbochin felt a powerful palm grab him, and he immediately couldn't exert any strength. Let go of him. The Empress's face was full of anger. The red muslin on her body fluttered even though there was no wind, and her fine black hair also fluttered upward. No matter who the world's #1 expert was, no one could touch my people. Let go. The Empress threw a punch at him without hesitation. Afraid that she would hurt Renbochin, she deliberately concentrated all the force of this punch on one point. You can't hit him. I'm fine with this punch, but this guy is dead meat. Li Fu quickly shouted, grabbed Renbochin, and immediately fell into the darkness. Li Fu. The Empress was furious and immediately chased after him. Renbochin felt a strong wind blowing on his body, and he couldn't even open his eyes. This speed was even faster than when the Empress was carrying him. In just a short while, the two of them landed somewhere unknown. Li Fu. I'm going to kill you. The Empress's roar came from afar. Kid, speak. Li Fu shook Renbochin to the ground. Renbochin was shocked that this ordinary-looking Li Fu could actually make the Empress completely unable to catch up with him. In just a short while, the Empress couldn't locate the two of them. This kind of strength was truly terrifying. Fortunately, Li Fu didn't want his life. Otherwise, even the Empress wouldn't be able to protect him. After calming himself down, Renbochin smiled bitterly and said, You ate Her Majesty's roasted meat, drank Her Majesty's wine, and even captured Her Majesty's man. Even though you're the most respected person in the world, this isn't very good, right? Li Fu was slightly embarrassed and said, That girl is difficult to deal with, and I don't want to argue with her. Tell me, and I'll send you back and give you something good. Renbochin felt relieved after seeing Li Fu's expression. This world's #1 expert was exactly as he had felt before, and he wasn't a scheming and merciless person. It's useless for me to tell you. At present, even the entire nation can't manufacture this thing, Renbochin said. With my means, I'm afraid there aren't many things in the world that can baffle me. Tell me, Li Fu said in a deep voice as he straightened his body. Although these words were a little boastful, given Li Fu's status, he didn't feel that he was boasting. However, when it came to manufacturing a rocket, even if there were 100 of him, it wouldn't be of much use. A rocket can easily send you beyond the 9th heaven, Renbochin said faintly. What is that? Li Fu asked eagerly. Tell me what you know about the gods first. Renbochin changed the subject. Li Fu hesitated for a moment before sighing and saying, 200 years ago, I had a fiancé. Come to think of it, my fiancé is quite beautiful and virtuous. Upon hearing this, Renbochin immediately imagined a romance novel with 3 million words full of love and hatred. This old man's fiancé was stolen. By the gods. That couldn't be, right? However, just 6 months before we got married, my fiancé suddenly became pregnant. Renbochin asked, Huh? However, my fiancé was still a virgin. People say that the gods met in a dream and that she was the son of a deity. However, I couldn't accept it, so I spent 6 months forging this dragon turtle rod. I swore to find the god who humiliated my fiancé and let him have a taste of the humiliation I suffered. Li Fu was overflowing with murderous intent, and his beard stood up like steel needles. This was a sign that his mind was fluctuating violently and his body was full of vigor. A Are you going to explode the god's backyard flower? Ren Baqin was dumbfounded. Putting everything else aside, Li Fu's ambition alone was worthy of being the #1 expert in the world. Backyard flower. Not bad, it's very appropriate. That's it. Li Fu then said sternly, this old man has searched for 200 years, from the desert to the East Sea, from the south to the north. From a blacksmith, I have become the world's #1 blacksmith, but this stairway to heaven is still like an illusion. I have searched for all the rumors about the gods in the world, and I'm preparing to go to the depths of the 60,000 mountains to see if there's anything I'm looking for in those endless mountains. He turned his head and stared at Ren Baqin sternly. Kid, if you can do this, I'll give you great benefits. If you lie to me, no one in the world will be able to protect you. Ren Baqin opened his mouth and was a little dumbfounded. The hatred of this #1 expert in the world was so deep that he really didn't know what to say. After thinking about it, Ren Baqin decided not to tell Li Fu about his speculation about whether his fiancée might have been swimming or falling into the water when someone happened to shoot her. Ren Baqin was afraid that this blow would be too big. The other party had searched for 200 years. According to the other party, he was originally a blacksmith, but in these 200 years, he became the #1 expert in the world. He gave up everything, fame, wealth, beauty, and all the good things in the world, all for the sake of revenge. Chapter 535. Ren Baqin pondered. What he wanted to know the most was how Li Fu became the #1 blacksmith in the world and how he was on his way to finding a deity. What would those martial artists in the world, who wished to spend every minute on martial arts and wanted to advance further, think of this? What would a hard-working martial artist like Ren Baqin think? Also, Ren Baqin had a fiancée 200 years ago, so he should be at least 220 years old now, right? The lifespan of a spirit world expert was generally 180 to 200 years. Even if Ren Baqin lived longer than others, he should be reaching the end of his lifespan at 220 years old, right? Ren Baqin heard that there was a realm above the spirit world level, but he didn't know if Li Fu had reached that level. Could Ren Baqin wait for a rocket that would take at least a few decades to be manufactured? If not, Ren Baqin could only make a hot air balloon to fool Li Fu, and his hopes of becoming the #1 fighter in the world would be dashed. At this thought, Ren Baqin whispered, Senior, to be honest, it will take at least 30 to 50 years to manufacture a rocket. I don't know if you can wait that long. Are you afraid that I don't have enough lifespan? Li Fu laughed. I can wait 30 to 50 years. Although I can wait, I don't want to wait that long. For the past 200 years, I have been thinking about how to kill my way to the sky and find that deity. Tell me about your idea. Use a rocket. Ren Baqin found a stone and drew a rough pattern on the ground. Use the thrust generated by the combustion of the fuel in the bunker to send the rocket into the sky. This old man has also thought about it. Continuously beating the air to raise oneself high up in the sky is quite similar to your method. However, even I can only rise 100 meters by beating the air. On the other hand, your idea sounds more feasible, Li Fu said happily. However, like I said, to manufacture a rocket isn't something that can be manufactured in a short period of time. It requires the advancement of the entire industry. On one hand, the manufacturing process, on the other hand, the alloy, and on the other hand, the fuel. Ren Baqin explained some of the issues regarding the rocket to Li Fu in detail while paying attention to Li Fu's expression. In fact, it wasn't easy to manufacture a rocket that could send people into the sky without considering the airtightness and other issues. Without the alloy, how many tons of steel would a rocket that could send people into the sky weigh? How much fuel would be needed to push such a heavy rocket into the sky? Just solving this problem alone was not something that could be solved in a short period of time. Not to mention other problems. Following Ren Baqin's explanation, Li Fu's expression became serious. Although there were many parts that he didn't understand, there were some parts that he understood. After all, he was a blacksmith himself and was a top-notch expert. There were many things that he could comprehend by analogy. From the other party's description, it was indeed not as easy as he had thought. Therefore, if we want to build a rocket, we must promote the technological development of the entire country to a certain level before it can be produced. This will take at least 30 to 50 years, and it will require the strength of the entire nation, Renbochin said. Li Fu crossed his arms and closed his eyes, deep in thought. According to Renbochin, this thing called a rocket was indeed very feasible. However, it would take a long time to manufacture it, and he really didn't want to wait that long. Renbochin sized Li Fu up. It was difficult for him to look at the person in front of him with admiration. He looked at Li Fu as if he was looking at a village fool. Although Li Fu was indeed the most powerful person in the world, after hearing about his stories, Renbochin felt that Li Fu was no different from a village fool in some aspects. Such a person was actually the most powerful in the world. Renbochin wondered how much psychological trauma the heroes of this world had experienced in the past 200 years. Why don't you wait in Deo for some time? Perhaps your smithing skills will be of help at some point. Recently, I have been trying to make a steam engine, but there are still some difficulties that I can't solve. If you can help us with this, we might be able to speed up the progress, Renbochin said sincerely. As for the steam engine, it could only be made after the situation in Tianjin Basin was resolved. If this expert couldn't wait and captured the leader of the rebel army, it would be a huge gain. I need to think about it, Li Fu said hesitantly. What else does Senior need to think about? You want to go to heaven, and I want to make something that can go to heaven. This means that Dayo's industry has reached a certain standard, and our goals are the same. Besides, I'm also very interested in what I can see in the sky. It's too long. Li Fu shook his head. It's better for me to go to the end of the 60,000 mountains to find the whereabouts of the stairway to heaven. Senior, this is Dayo, and the 60,000 mountains are also part of Dayo's territory. In this land, countless people will help you find it with just a word from Her Majesty. It won't be too late for you to go there when you have news. I'm afraid that little girl is going to find trouble with me. Li Fu shook his head. If it's because of you that you brought me here, Her Majesty will naturally not pursue this matter after I return. Her Majesty just wants to see how strong the world's most powerful expert is. If you have nothing else to do, why don't you show Her Majesty your skills? Her Majesty will naturally not pester you anymore. After all, you also need Her Majesty's help to find the stairway to heaven in the 60,000 mountains. It wouldn't be too much for you to show Her Majesty your skills, right? Renbochin felt that there was a way to fool the world's most rash person. His tone became more amiable, and his attitude became more attentive. Li Fu thought for a long time before saying, "I'll bring you back." After saying this, he carried Renbochin with one hand, and another gust of wind hit his face. After a while, Renbochin squinted against the wind and could already see the fire in the distance, as well as the noise brought by the wind. Li Fu. The Empress was the first to discover the two of them. She shouted and pounced toward them. "Little girl, I'm not here to fight." Li Fu carried Renbochin and spun in the air, dodging the Empress. He casually put Renbochin on the ground and retreated to a distance. The Empress turned around and sized up Renbochin. Seeing that he was fine, her expression eased a little. However, she quickly became cold again. Her two attacks were easily dodged by Renbochin, which was a little hard to accept. "Your Majesty, don't be in a hurry to fight." Renbochin saw that the Empress was about to make a move again and quickly stopped her. "Your Majesty, both of you are experts in the world. If you fight, it's hard to guarantee that you won't be injured. At this time, quelling the rebellion is more important. Your Majesty, please think twice." Furthermore, Senior has already agreed to show us his moves and broaden our horizons. Why don't you watch from the side? The Empress frowned. Why did Rinpochen speak up for Li Fu after not seeing him for a while? However, seeing Rinpochen winking at her, the Empress knew that there had to be a reason. She snorted and didn't say anything else. Senior, we have heard of you for a long time. It's a pity that we haven't seen you in action. Why don't you show us 3 moves and broaden our horizons? Rinpochen turned his head and winked at Li Fu again. Fine. Although I'm not good at fighting, I still know a thing or two. At this time, their positions had changed. Now that Li Fu was the one asking the Empress for help, he no longer refused. Chapter 536. In the west direction of the Wang estuary, dozens of holes had appeared on the mountain wall. Each hole was 4 meters high and 4 meters wide. From Jiangbei to the Wang estuary, they had to go around the eastern side. Therefore, few people could discover the cave entrance on the west side. At this time, the hole that was originally dozens of meters above the ground was basically filled up, but there were still soldiers pouring soil out of the hole. Inside these caves, there was a thick tree trunk every dozen meters as a support. After walking for a few hundred meters, what appeared in front of them was a huge space lit up by torches. It was tens of meters tall and had a circumference of several hundred meters. Towering stone pillars stood in the space. If one looked closely, they would see tiny holes on the pillars. Countless tiny insects crawled up and down the pillars, making light but concentrated sounds. If someone with trypophobia saw this scene, they would probably have a heart attack. In this space, there were countless wooden racks, soldiers coming and going, as well as many strange creatures that were 6 to 7 meters long, covered in plate armor and hard shells. They had mouse-like heads and long tails. Some of them surrounded the pillar and licked it from time to time, swallowing a large number of bugs on the pillar into their stomachs. Some of them were digging at the edge of the space or on the shelves. Whether it was soil or rocks, they were like tofu under their sharp claws. In the middle of the space, there was a wooden platform next to the thickest pillar. An old man dressed in embroidered robes sat cross-legged on it, watching everything. Beside him sat a man wearing a bird feather cape and a feathered crown. Mr. Chiu, it should be about time, right? The old man in embroidered robe calculated the space of the cave and asked the man with the feathered crown beside him. It's almost time. The feathered crown man called Mr. Chiu let out a few strange sounds, and the dozen or so people in the cave who were dressed like him shouted at the same time, and they all struck the gongs in their hands. Following the sound of the whip, the digging exotic beasts stopped and gathered near the stone pillars, licking the worms on them. This world is truly amazing. The man in embroidered robes sighed as he looked at the strange beasts and the huge stone pillars in the cave. This strange beast was called Cho-Yu. It was good at digging holes and was one of the beast soldiers of the 6 doors. On the other hand, the worms could eat soil and pull out stones to form such a stone pillar. The combination of these two could produce miraculous results. However, this Cho-Yu fed on these worms. Therefore, he found it very amazing. Hearing the admiration of the man in embroidered robes, Mr. Chiu smiled contentedly. It was indeed worthy of him to be praised by a spirit wool expert. For hundreds of years, the Cho family had trained Cho-Yu in the 6 doors. It could be said that Cho-Yu was a part of his family. When others praised Cho-Yu, they naturally praised him as well. When the time comes to break the pillars, we'll start from the 6 pillars in the north, from east to west, right? The man in embroidered robes asked again. That's right. As long as we cut off the 12 pillars in the north according to this order, the north side of the cave will gradually collapse. At the same time, the cliffs above will collapse and cut off their escape route. After that, the entire cave will collapse. Even a portion of the mountain peak at the top will collapse. Naturally, those people will not be able to escape, Mr. Cho said. This heavenly zhong pillar is the most important. It doesn't matter if the northern pillar is broken, but we must wait for everyone to leave before letting the death warriors break the heavenly zhong pillar. Otherwise, all of you will be buried here. Understood. The man in embroidered robes remembered all of Mr. Cho's words. After all, it was a matter of life and death, so he couldn't be careless. Looking up, he saw that at the top of the pillar in the middle, countless insects were climbing up to the top of the cave, piling up stones to form a stone net, connecting all the pillars together. At the same time, it was also strengthening the cave. My task is completed. We should go back. After Mr. Cho finished speaking, he stood up from the wooden platform and shouted a few times to the surrounding people. His clansmen immediately opened the boxes one by one and rang the bells with their hands. The insects on the stone pillars climbed down from the stone pillars and burrowed into the boxes. However, they only drilled half of the way in before the boxes were full. These days, the number of worms multiplied more than double. The Cho-yu took this opportunity to eat heartily. Their long tongues rolled on the ground and a black worm entered their mouths. At this moment, halfway up the mountain, not only were the Empress, Renbachien, and Li Fu present, but even Shiwanya, Zhongxin, Qingping, Gongjing, Qingyun Sword, Zhua Cheng, and a group of winged cavalry warriors and experts from the rearguard commandery were all gathered there. No one wanted to miss the most powerful expert in the world making a move. Li Fu sternly said, "I was born as a blacksmith and am not good at fighting. However, I have something to say." Everyone listened attentively when they heard what he said. Even the Empress wouldn't ignore the advice of the most powerful expert in the world. Everything in the world has a spirit. Humans have a spirit, swords have a spirit, sabers have a spirit, mountains and trees have a spirit. Since there is a spirit, there is life and death. Just like how humans have vital points like the heart and head, everything in the world also has a vital point. Once you find this vital point, you can kill it. I call it a dead point. Everyone knows the vital points of humans and animals, but it's difficult for ordinary people to find the dead points of other things. As I said before, mountains, rivers, and trees all have a spirit. This mountain has a spirit, so it naturally has a dead point. Li Fu's aura rose slightly when he said this. Although it wasn't much better than before, it made people feel like he was different. His body seemed to have grown taller. The aura of an expert was also emitted from his body. If he was just an ordinary old man before, everyone could now feel that the person in front of them was the most powerful expert in the world. As long as you find the dead point, you can cause more damage. You don't even need to spend too much effort to kill it. After Li Fu finished speaking, the crow's leg on the short rod in his hand struck the ground at lightning speed. With this strike, everyone became alert and heard a dull rumbling sound coming from the belly of the mountain. Everyone felt their feet begin to shake, and huge cracks began to appear on the ground. Everyone was shocked. He was indeed the most powerful expert in the world. This strike could actually shake a mountain with a radius of several kilometers. This was simply not something that a human could do. Everyone looked at Li Fu with admiration. At this moment, the ground shook even more violently, and everyone even felt as if they were sinking. Chapter 537. No wonder he's the most powerful expert in the world. The power of this strike is earth-shattering. I'm afraid no one in this world can withstand this strike. Everyone was amazed. No, retreat. Li Fu's expression suddenly changed. He appeared beside Renbachien at lightning speed, grabbed him with one hand, and ran down the mountain. At the same time, a slender jade-like hand grabbed his other arm. The Empress stared coldly at Li Fu. Are you trying to snatch my man? Stop looking and run. The mountain is going to collapse. Li Fu shouted, released his hand, and jumped down the mountain. At this time, the mountain shook even more violently. Everyone was shocked to hear this, and they couldn't care less about anything else as they jumped down the mountain one after another. Boom! The entire left side of the mountain collapsed from the waist down. Rocks the size of a human flew everywhere, and large pieces of gravel and soil fell down. The earth-shattering scene shocked everyone. Everyone fled as fast as they could. After a while, the Empress returned to the barracks with Renbochin. The rumbling sound was still incessant and even louder than before. When everyone turned around to look, they saw a scene that scared them out of their wits. They saw that the right side of the mountain was also collapsing toward the left side. The gravel and soil rushed into the forest and flooded the barracks. Retreat quickly. The Empress's cold voice spread throughout the area, but there was something strange in her voice. Even she was shocked by the power of this strike. The surrounding soldiers had long been alarmed by the earth-shattering scene in the distance, and they quickly ran for their lives when they heard this. As for Renbochin, his eyes were wide open with a dull look on his face. That idiot shattered the mountain with one strike. This was a mountain with a radius of a few kilometers, and it was actually shattered by one strike. Was it really that powerful to die a little? The collapse of the mountain lasted for 4 hours before it stopped. The soil and gravel didn't hit the barracks, but it flattened a small part of the forest at the foot of the mountain. Everyone stood there and looked at the scene in front of them in shock. There were originally 2 mountain peaks, but at this time, more than half of the one on the right was gone. That place had become a pile of gravel and soil. The Wang estuary was gone. Everyone turned their heads to look at Li Fu, who had his mouth wide open in confusion. Then, they looked at the hill in the distance with faces full of shock. Was this the strength of the number one in the world? This was no longer a human, he was simply a god. Renbochin's brain was in a mess. The scene in front of him was beyond his understanding. Was this really something a human could do? Even the corners of the Empress's eyes were twitching. She weighed the disparity between her and Li Fu in her heart. After a while, she felt somewhat disappointed. Li Fu's strike had dispelled her thoughts of fighting him. Senior is indeed worthy of being the world's most powerful expert. Renbochin finally regained his senses after an unknown period of time. With a shocked look on his face, he said sincerely. Such a person was worthy of being a walking nuclear warhead. This kind of strength completely shattered his previous understanding of this world. After hearing what Renbochin said, everyone looked at Li Fu again. The world's number one, fully deserving of the title. I'm afraid that we won't be able to find a second person in the next 1,000 years. Shi Wanya sighed. It was a pity that such an expert was not from the Aboriginals. Indeed, fully deserving. Qin Yun's sword and Zhou Qing were full of admiration. The 2 of them were different from the others. The others were Aboriginals, and the martial arts they practiced were different from them. On the other hand, the martial arts they practiced were similar to Li Fu's. Li Fu was indeed a lighthouse on their way forward. Although he was very far away from the 2 of them, they could see a possibility. Just by looking at their worshipful expressions, Renbochin felt that they had become Li Fu's die-hard fans. Shattering a mountain with one strike is fearsome and terrifying, the Empress said softly. Li Fu blankly looked at everyone, looked down at the dragon turtle rod in his hand, and then at his hands. Could it be that his strength had unknowingly reached this level? Although everything had a weak point, this weak point only increased the power of an attack by a few times. It would be fine if it was a smaller object, but it was a mountain. When he struck with his rod, he could only shatter an area with a radius of 1,000 meters, which was already considered the limit of this world. Now, it wasn't just an area with a radius of 1,000 meters, but the entire mountain. He didn't expect that he had unknowingly reached such a level. Although he had never thought of practicing and only wanted to find the gods in heaven, his cultivation level was constantly rising, but this wasn't his ambition. Li Fu was a little disappointed and frustrated. Even with his strength, he still hadn't found the stairway to heaven. Fortunately, there was a little hope now. Ren Baqin noticed Li Fu looking at him and was sincerely convinced. "Instructor, I want to learn this. You must teach me." In Shuiyang City, the experts in the city landed on top of the city wall and looked at the Wang estuary in the distance. The earth shaking and mountain shaking just now had alarmed everyone. Some people were bewildered. What exactly happened there? Although they couldn't see it, the fact that the sound and vibration could be transmitted here was enough to show how powerful the earthquake was. As for the others, they understood what had happened. "I'm afraid that those barbarians wanted to cross the Wang estuary at night, and Mr. Yu Yang cut off the supporting pillars, causing such a drastic change." Xia Kuan asked. "It seems so. Those barbarians definitely didn't expect us to prepare such a big gift for them. I really want to see Qi Zixiao's expression at that time." Rao Yu laughed heartily. According to this power, even if Qi Zixiao was there, he wouldn't have survived. Senior Su and Senior Ji Shui have already gone to investigate. We will know when they return. Young Master Ning from the Yun Nation laughed. So what if it was Qi Zixiao? Zhu Wuzhen at the front line was overwhelmed by the barbarians. He was known as a famous general, but he couldn't compare to a few words from him. After an hour, two figures appeared from the darkness with shocked expressions on their faces. "What's the situation?" the leaders of the three major powers immediately asked. "The Wang estuary is gone. The entire mountain has collapsed." The two spirit will experts who went to investigate landed on top of the city wall and said. "Then, Mr. Yu Yang?" Xia Kuan asked in a deep voice. "The cave entrance was buried, and no one came out. I'm afraid." The two of them said sadly. "How could this be?" Xia Kuan was shocked. According to the plan, they only needed to leave a few men of sacrifice behind. Why didn't Mr. Yu Yang escape? What about Chiu Ku and his clansmen? Mr. Bo asked anxiously. "I didn't see Mr. Chiu or his clansmen or those strange beasts," the two spirit will experts answered. How could this be? Everyone was shocked. According to the plan, Mr. Chiu and his clansmen would evacuate first, and Mr. Yu Yang would wait until the last moment before leaving. Both sides could have completely retreated. How could they all disappear? Xia Kuan's expression was uncertain. After a while, he said, "I'm afraid something unforeseen happened that we don't know about. Or maybe Mr. Yu Yang and Mr. Chiu realized that the barbarians wanted to pass through during the night and couldn't retreat in time, so they cut off the heavenly crystal and perished together with the barbarians." I'm afraid so. Mr. Yu Yang and Mr. Chiu, as well as Mr. Chiu's clansmen, are really brave warriors. Tai Zai said. He had a higher opinion of the people from the 6 doors. He didn't expect that there would be such experts in the sect. Although those who knew Mr. Yu Yang didn't think that he was that kind of person, the truth was right in front of them. Everyone changed their opinion of Yu Yang. What are the casualties of the barbarians? Everyone asked. If Mr. Yu Yang, a spirit will expert, couldn't escape, the aboriginals would probably suffer heavy casualties. At the thought of this, many people looked relieved. As long as this group of aboriginal elites died, Dayo would no longer be able to worry about Tianjing Basin. They wouldn't even be able to defend Gu City. It was really a landslide just now, and it was difficult for the two of us to get close. Furthermore, it was late at night, and it was difficult to see. The two of us will go and take a look tomorrow morning. Thank you, sirs, the leaders of the 3 major powers said. At this moment, the haze in everyone's hearts had finally dissipated. All that was left was to go to the Wang estuary tomorrow morning to check on the casualties of the Aboriginals. Chapter 538. Early in the morning, a faint mist pervaded between heaven and earth. Two figures leaped out of the city and disappeared into the mist in the distance. It didn't take long before the two of them arrived near a mound of dirt. Who would believe that this was a mountain that was hundreds of meters high just a day ago? However, all of this was gone now. Looking at the current situation, they could still recall the scene of the landslide last night. There's no one and no traces left behind. It seems like Yu Yang and the rest are really buried underground. After carefully searching the west side for a while, one of them sighed slightly. Previously, I underestimated Yu Yang. I didn't expect him to have such an unyielding side, the other person said. Although Yu Yang has become one with the earth, he has done a great deed for all living beings in Tianjing Basin. In the future, we should set up a memorial for him. I wonder what the casualties of those barbarians are like. This time, the collapse was more severe than expected. Other than Qi Zhixiao, Shi Wanya, and a few other experts, the soldiers from the Protectorate of the South and the winged cavalry had no chance of escaping. The so-called unable to escape even if they had wings is what they faced at that time. Be careful. Let's go to the top of the mountain and take a look. The two of them reached the top of the mountain in a flash. The traces left behind by the landslide here were much more serious than on the other side. This was because the mountain had collapsed towards this side. The valley between the two mountains had been completely filled up. As for the forest on the south side of the mountain, half of it had been submerged by the mud. Further south, there was a large campsite. It was as if nothing had happened. The patrolling soldiers, smoke rising from kitchen chimneys, and soldiers busy with all kinds of things. It was a peaceful scene. Although the landslides and the fissures were very close to them, they were separated by the forest into two different worlds. One world was tattered and full of holes, while the other world was as if nothing had happened. The two of them widened their eyes in an instant. Why was the other party's campsite still there? Why did it seem as if nothing had happened? Why? Why? The two of them couldn't figure it out. Perhaps it was the winged cavalry that passed through yesterday. After all, the winged cavalry is our greatest enemy. With just the Protectorate of the South, there's no way we can contend against an army of 300,000 rebels, one of them said hesitantly. Everyone had hoped that the barbarians would suffer heavy losses from the landslide, but judging from the current camp, the number of soldiers walking in the camp, and the amount of smoke coming from the kitchen, it did not seem to be the case. There must be an important reason why Yu Yang would suddenly cut down the heavenly crystal and cause the entire mountain to collapse. In that case, it could only be because of the few barbarians, the famous winged cavalry. Even if the winged cavalry had passed through yesterday, they would have been completely annihilated. It's really strange that these barbarians didn't react at all. I've long heard that these barbarians believe that after they die, their souls will return to the mountains and watch over and protect their descendants with their ancestors. Therefore, they viewed life and death as a normal matter and were not afraid of it at all. From the looks of it, that is indeed the case. He's just a barbarian. The other person snorted heavily. Just in case, it's better to test it out. Qi Zhixiao must still be there, as well as Shi Wanya. I'm afraid we won't be able to get away with it. The two of them looked at the camp in the distance and felt hesitant. At this moment, a Baihu from the rearguard commandery saw the two of them with binoculars. After reporting, a group of burly men wearing leather armor jumped out of the tent and ran towards the two of them. Upon seeing this group of people, the two of them first observed for a while. Then, their expressions changed drastically. These people were obviously the winged cavalry that Yu Yang had buried at the foot of the mountain. What? What's going on? I'm afraid that something big has happened. Let's go back quickly. The two of them looked at each other with suspicion in their eyes. Why exactly did Yu Yang cut down the heavenly crystal yesterday? A moment later, everyone gathered in Shuiyang City. Do you mean that those barbarians didn't suffer any losses at all? Xia Kuan and the other two had ugly expressions on their faces. Last night, everyone was still in high spirits. They didn't expect to hear the worst news after just one night. Even if they did, the damage was very small, the two of them said. The two of us saw that the camp was very calm and had some doubts before, but after seeing those winged cavalry, we no longer had any doubts. Then Mr. Yu Yang, I'm afraid that something unforeseen has happened that we don't know about. I think I know what's going on. The man surnamed Ning from the Yun Nation had an ugly expression on his face for a while, but he gradually calmed down. Mr. Ning. Xia Kuan looked at him with a probing gaze. Although I don't know the reason, Senior Yu Yang must have been discovered. That's why the heavenly crystal was suddenly cut off, but those barbarians didn't suffer any losses. The sounds in the cave can't be heard from outside. Unless someone discovered that the mountain was empty and then discovered the problem. Regardless of whether those barbarians discovered it by chance or if there was an expert among them, you don't have to think too much about it. Fortunately, we still have a backup plan in case of accidents. This time, we will definitely make sure that they won't be able to return, Mr. Ning said confidently. Now that the Wang estuary has collapsed and the mountain road has been completely buried, I'm afraid it will take them 2 days to pass through. Now, please send a general to lead an army to the hill in the north and set up camp there. Make it seem like they are going to meet them at the river bank. When they see this army, they definitely won't think too much about whether there is a problem or not. Given the barbarians' temperament, if they see someone blocking their way, and the number of soldiers is about the same as theirs, and the water is not wide, they will definitely cut wood to make boats and send their army across the river to attack. At that time, we will open the river and let the water rush down. Except for the hill, everything else will be swept into the water. Naturally, most of those barbarians will become food for the fish and shrimp in the river. Hearing Mr. Ning's words, everyone calmed down. What if they discover that the water level has decreased and have suspicions? Someone asked. If those barbarians could think that much, then they wouldn't be barbarians. And no matter what, they will have to cross the river. Do you think they will go upstream to take a look? Even if they discover it, they will just open the river in advance, someone said with a smile. Everyone nodded. Indeed, even if this plan failed, there would be no loss. If it succeeded, then the harvest would be huge. However, everyone still felt that it would be difficult for the barbarians to discover that the water level had decreased and the river had become narrower. The only loss would be the crops in the north of the city. However, no one cared about those crops at this time. Thanks to Mr. Ning strategizing and planning, even though those barbarians managed to escape once, they definitely won't be able to escape this time. Xia Kuan smiled as he stroked his beard. A just cause enjoys abundant support, while an unjust cause finds little support. Those barbarians are the enemies of you, me, the Yun Nation, the Qin Nation, and everyone in Great Xia, the youth surnamed Ning said with a smile. Well said, Mr. Ning. Xia Kuan laughed heartily. Soon after, the city was mobilized. An army of about 15,000 people left the city and headed for a hill in the north. They set up camp there and waited for the aboriginals to arrive. Chapter 539. Unlike the various thoughts going through the minds of the people in the south, the aboriginal barracks were very calm. The Empress sent the winged cavalry to open up a path on the newly formed hill. After all, the hill had collapsed and the original road was gone, so they had to open up a path that could allow carriages and horses to move forward. It didn't need to be very flat, but at least there shouldn't be too many rocks blocking the way. This was a piece of cake for the winged cavalry. The Baihu of the rearguard commandery were also sent out to investigate. In addition, there was a fierce man in the barracks who could smash a mountain with a stick. Even the ordinary soldiers had heard of this. The incident of Li Fu smashing a mountain with a stick was vividly told by some people. Coupled with the scene of the mountain collapsing and the ground splitting, Li Fu's reputation spread throughout the barracks. Furthermore, his status as the world's most powerful expert was a powerful proof and a legendary halo. In the barracks, Renbochin sat in front of the Empress's tent with a mischievous look on his face. As long as he learned Li Fu's stick, his days of being beaten up by the little Lolita would finally come to an end. "Sir Ren, where's my electric baton?" Ning Kaichen was sitting not far from him with a charming look on her face. "Wait, I'll bring it to you in 2 days." Renbochin waved her away as if she were a fly and continued to imagine himself killing everyone after learning Li Fu's godly rod. Well, godly rod was the name Renbochin gave it. In some ways, it had the same effect as the finger of God. The only difference was that one targeted the death spot while the other targeted the G spot. After chasing Ning Kaichen away, Renbochin turned to look at the Empress in the tent. She was sitting there with a soulless look on her face. It was rare to see an Empress like this. It seemed that the power of Li Fu's stick had dealt her a huge blow. One of them was the 4th most powerful expert in the world, and the other was the most powerful expert in the world. The Empress suddenly realized that there was such a huge gap between her and the strongest expert. How could the proud and arrogant Empress accept this? "Your Majesty, do you want to go back and relax?" Renbochin got up and walked into the tent. "It will take at least 1 or 2 days to clear the way out." "Go back, I still have some things to think about." The Empress waved her hand. "All right." Renbochin looked at the Empress. It seemed that she wanted to bid farewell to her homebody life and work hard to catch up. Seeing that the Empress was no longer paying attention to him, he immediately disappeared from the room. That night, Renbochin appeared in the Empress's tent in high spirits with 2 big bags. Although the Empress wasn't by his side, his man-will level strength was enough for him to run amok in most places. At least for the past 3 days, he had found a lot of fun. For example, stuffing someone's head into the toilet, or using a pistol to blow up someone's anus. He was starting to like this country of Brother Black. This kind of chaos, the feeling of completely relying on one's strength to do whatever one wanted, was really not bad. Unlike in China, where he had to abide by the law at all times. As soon as Renbochin returned to the tent with a refreshed look on his face, he was kicked out of the tent in the dark. "Take the things outside." The Empress sent Renbochin flying with a kick. Immediately, she felt a wave of refreshment. The worries that had been troubling her for the entire day were temporarily put to the back of her mind. Renbochin lay on the ground, feeling rather wronged. Who did he offend? He was kicked as soon as he came back. According to the current time, the Empress should be asleep. He carried his things back to the tent. After daybreak, Renbochin came out of the tent and saw Ning Kaichen looking at him from afar with a charming smile on his face, which made Renbochin feel disgusted. "Where's the shueka?" Renbochin asked. Ning Kaichen took out a palm-sized jade box and waved it at Renbochin. Renbochin turned around and went into the tent. After searching for a long time, he took out the electric batons, batteries, and solar chargers that he had just brought back. The 2 of them squatted at the side of the tent as if they were carrying out some shameful transaction. "In any case, we have been through thick and thin together, so I won't cheat you. These are 2 electric batons. This is a solar battery, and this is a solar panel. With these things, you can travel the world with 3 electric batons." Renbochin took out the things from the bag one by one and showed them to Ning Kaichen. "Sir Ren, it's obviously 2 electric batons." Ning Kaichen winked. "Cough, cough." Ning Zaichen's winking actually made Renbaqian's heart palpitate with eagerness, and he quickly chanted Amitabha in his heart. Renbaqian had to admit that Ning Kaichen had become more and more seductive after his sex change. He was even more seductive than a real woman. If it was someone who didn't know about his background, they would probably be bewitched by him. Renbaqian explained the battery, solar panel, and how to charge it in detail to Ning Kaichen. After all, a person had to be trustworthy. If he were to directly give him an electric baton, he would probably realize that it was out of battery after a day. Furthermore, Renbaqian was somewhat responsible for his transformation. Renbaqian now hoped that these 2 electric batons could accompany him for the rest of his life. After explaining everything to Ning Kaichen, Renbaqian earnestly said, "I guarantee a replacement and not a refund. If you have any problems, come to me and I will replace them with 2 electric batons." Ning Zaichen's eyes were almost dripping with tears. "If I didn't know that Sir Ren is too fierce on the inside, would have wanted to marry you. Forget about marrying me." Renbaqian waved his hand. Renbaqian only waved his hand halfway when he felt a gust of wind blow past him. Following which, there was a loud slap, and Ning Kaichen was getting further and further away from him. After the Empress slapped Ning Kaichen away, she snorted, turned around, and strolled back. After a while, Ning Kaichen came back with half his face swollen. He looked submissive and stopped throwing flirtatious glances. Indeed, a married man couldn't be provoked. She threw the jade box to Renbaqian, picked up one of the electric batons, and poked it into her hand. Her whole body trembled, and her face was filled with satisfaction. Then, she carried the box back to her electrocution treatment in high spirits. Renbaqian opened the box and took a look. Inside was a blood-red rhizome that looked a little like ginseng. Its body was slender and covered with many thin and long feelers. Just as he opened the box, a whiff of medicinal fragrance assailed his nostrils, invigorating his spirit. Fortunately, it's not a weird smell. Renbaqian got up and went to look for the Empress. "Your Majesty, how do I use this thing? It's best to decoct medicine. However, there isn't much opportunity to do so now. Just eat it directly, and it will bring out 60 to 70% of the strength of the medicine," the Empress said faintly. "Oh." Renbaqian opened his mouth and stuffed the shueca into it without any hesitation. "Why does it taste a little like carrots?" Renbaqian mumbled as he chewed. In less than 2 minutes, Renbaqian felt a huge wave of heat crashing all over his body. Rather than saying it was a wave of heat, it would be better to say it was a ball of flame. He felt his body temperature rising continuously, as if he was immersed in hot water. Every inch of his skin was red, and his eyes looked as if they were about to spit out fire. "Damn, it's cooked. It's cooked!" Renbaqian screamed in his heart. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. This kind of high temperature made his brain muddled. All the sweat glands in his body were excreting water frantically. It was as if he was taking a shower, and his clothes were drenched in the blink of an eye. At this moment, the Empress walked to his back and slapped his body more than 10 times consecutively. The raging flames in Renbaqian's body were immediately dispersed into his body. "Throw him into the water," the Empress said faintly as she walked to Renbaqian's side and sized up his expression. When he lowered his head, he saw a tent that was erected high above him. Chapter 540. At this moment, Renbaqian felt countless tiny flames covering his entire body and burning every inch of his flesh. It was as if he was hammering out the impurities in steel. The black filth that came out of his body was washed away by the river water around him. However, outsiders couldn't see this clearly because steam was coming out of Renbaqian's body as if there was a fog around him. In his mind, there was an earth-shattering change. The original world of fire began to collapse. The volcano collapsed, lava and gravel flew in all directions, and strong winds started to blow. The metal chain and the spear, which were previously comfortably soaking their feet in the lava, suddenly jumped up and drilled out of Renbochen's head. Renbochen was tightly tied up with a metal chain. They didn't know what this guy had done, but they didn't even have a place to hide. As for the spear, it didn't have as many requirements as the metal chain. It just floated beside Renbochen as if it was weightless. When the river water washed over the spear, it would split into two. The Empress stood on the shore and looked at the faint mist in the water without saying a word. Although the Shueika was effective, it was only effective against Renbochen. She could easily disperse this level of medicinal power, so she naturally didn't need to worry. However, even though she said this, she still stood at the side and watched quietly. Li Fu suddenly appeared beside her, carefully sensed, and asked in surprise, "Is it really a heaven-grade weapon?" Li Fu still looked like a beggar with tattered clothes and messy hair. Although Renbochen had asked someone to send him a new set of clothes, he didn't care. To him, it didn't make a difference whether it was new or tattered. It had already been 200 years, so how could there be any more surprises? When Renbochen was sent here in a hurry, he noticed that there were subtle fluctuations coming from the heaven-grade weapons. He didn't expect to see such a scene. He could clearly feel that these two heaven-grade weapons had Renbochen's aura. Ordinary people judged people based on their appearance or smell. At his level, he could already distinguish a person based on their godly soul. His appearance or smell could be changed, but his soul could never be changed. Strange. This guy is obviously a manual expert, so why does he have a heaven-grade weapon? And 2. Li Fu was surprised. The Empress took 2 steps to the side and distanced herself from Li Fu. She could not shake off the stench on him. She could treat him as the best in the world, but that did not mean that she had to put up with that stench. She had no interest in answering Li Fu's question. Li Fu thought for a long time, but he couldn't think of anything. In the end, he put the matter aside. In any case, he could ask this kid when he woke up. After a long time, Renbochen realized that he had regained control of his body. Then, the first thing he had to face was the iron chain that tied him up. Fortunately, the moment he recovered, the iron chain and the spear drilled directly into his head. However, the 2 fellows were stunned after entering his head. Where was the original volcano? Where's the lava? Why was there only a vast desert left? How was he supposed to soak his feet? How was he supposed to soak in the bath? The only bit of fun he had was taken away. The 2 fellows were stunned for a moment. They wanted to go out and fight with Renbochen, but they were flicked back by the Empress's finger. Seeing that Renbochen was fine, the Empress flicked the 2 fellows away with her finger and went back to think about how to reach Li Fu's level. Why do you have a heaven-grade weapon? That's impossible. Li Fu couldn't wait to ask when he saw Renbochen come ashore. And there are 2 of them. Even I only have 1. It's probably because I'm a genius. That's why I said that it was right for you to teach me that spear technique. Only I can carry it forward and surpass the master. Renbochen couldn't wait to throw a few punches. His speed was much faster than before, and his punches created quite a bit of wind. He tapped his feet on the ground and immediately leaped more than 10 meters away. The heart was fire, hid the spirit, and controlled the whole body. After completing the visualization of fire, the coordination of his entire body had improved. His strength and speed had also increased significantly. Although he hadn't tested it yet, he could feel his body, and he had a feeling that he was in control of everything in his body. This was the first time he had felt this way. Furthermore, he was 1 step closer to the earth will level. The next 2 parts were the visualization of earth and visualization of metal. In less than a year, not only did he reach the man will level, but he also broke through 3 levels of visualization and reached the intermediate level of the man-will level. Renbochin felt that he should be a genius. That's not right. Your spear belongs to Tingyu. I've seen him once before. How did his spear fall into your hands? It seems like it has been integrated into your treasure. As long as you reach the spirit will level, you will be able to use it without any problems. How can this be? Li Fu kept asking as he followed Renbochin. Now, other than matters related to the gods and the heavens, the only thing that could attract his attention was the things that Renbochin had never seen or heard of. As for that metal chain, although I haven't seen it before, it doesn't belong to you. How could it be on you? It's because they realized that there was no future for them to follow their original masters, so they abandoned the dark side for the light side. They can eat, drink, and even soak their feet with me. There's no future for them to fight and kill with their original masters every day, Renbochin said. Impossible. Although heaven-grade weapons are condensed from spirits, they don't have their own thoughts. Li Fu said seriously. Ask them if you don't believe me. Renbochin spread his hands. No, there must be something wrong. Li Fu's eyebrows were wrinkled, and his unkempt hair was swaying non-stop. He couldn't figure out how such a thing could happen. He realized that he had been searching for the gods all these years and didn't know much about the various secrets. Otherwise, he would definitely be able to guess the secret. Renbochin performed a set of Fist of Death. The wind from his fists whistled, and each step left a deep mark on the ground. After finishing his practice, Renbochin looked at the marks left on the ground and was somewhat satisfied. They were almost half as deep as before. He looked up at Li Fu and saw that he was still frowning and thinking hard. Renbochin said, Senior, since you can't figure it out, then, say no more. I will definitely figure out the reason. Li Fu reached out to stop Renbochin. He was the most powerful person in the world and had a better understanding of spirits than most people. It was impossible for him to think of something that others could think of. Renbochin was confused. Did you misunderstand something? I didn't say that I would tell you. What I meant was that since you can't figure it out, don't think about it. Ah, that's fine. Senior, when will you teach me the divine staff? Renbochin asked. In 2 days. I will teach you after I figure out this problem. Li Fu put his hands behind his back, lowered his head, and left with a bitter look on his face. As he walked, he kept muttering, Why? Why exactly? How did you do it? Why? Renbochin felt dizzy when he heard this. If he couldn't figure it out in this lifetime, wouldn't he have to take this move with him? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.